Chapter 85. The second problem is that in my iron cloud, who knows how many spies Di Wuqingro has planted over the years? I estimate that many of them hold high positions, both in the military and in the government. Tai Butian smiled and said, Mr. Chu, you once said that if you want to settle the outside, you must first settle the inside. As long as you can complete the first task, which is to clean up Butian Pavilion, then the second task will also be given to you. The last task is to attack the military and politics of the two countries. However, the prerequisite is stability. There are many people who are not afraid of death. If you can maintain the balance until you kill everyone, then it is also a balance. Tai Butian smiled, but there are some people who can shake the world just by killing one. Chu Yang smiled strangely. He understood the meaning behind Tai Butian's words. In other words, if you can't even complete the first task, then you should get out of here as soon as possible. Don't think about being second or third. As for his so-called balance, it was not something he said out of emotion. It was about the current political situation of the two countries and the current political situation of Iron Cloud. Balance. For the current Iron Cloud, balance and stability were much more important than rapid development. This was also Tai Butian's bottom line. Mr. Chu, I will leave Butian Pavilion in your hands. Tai Butian walked to the door and looked back with a smile. Butian Pavilion, haha. You want me to mend the heavens here? Chu Yang laughed. If Mr. Chu wants to cooperate, then you must show your own skills and methods. Divine weapons are always external objects. Boasting and bragging are just armchair strategies. Tai Butian lowered his eyebrows and smiled. The current Butian Pavilion is Mr. Chu's true touchstone. Butian Pavilion has been established for 3 years, but it is only a prototype. Tai Butian smiled meaningfully and walked out. From the beginning to the end, Tai Butian only introduced Chu Yang. He did not support him at all. If Chu Yang wanted to gain a foothold here, he would have to rely on his own strength to stand firm. Only then would he be able to reorganize and cleanse the place. In the end, he would have to take control of Butian Pavilion to complete the first step of his cooperation with Tai Butian. With Chu Yang's strength as a martial warrior, he had to control Butian Pavilion, which was composed of martial masters. Moreover, he had to get this group of people who were familiar with each other to listen to his commands and establish his authority. This was an almost impossible task. However, Chu Yang had no way out. Now that things had come to this, Tai Butian had given him the courtesy that he wanted. He wanted Tai Butian's attention, and Tai Butian gave it to him. The influence he had created had already been perfected. In fact, when he wanted Tai Butian's core Butian Pavilion, Tai Butian gave it to him as well. In Chu Yang's eyes, even though Tai Butian was a little effeminate and a little feminine and perverted, Tai Butian had given him the trust that Chu Yang wanted the most without reservation. Everything that Chu Yang had hoped for before coming to Iron Cloud had already been obtained. Now it was time for him to display his abilities. If he could not convince these people from Butian Pavilion, then it would prove that Chu Yang was not worthy of Tai Butian's trust. The current situation was that Chu Yang and Tai Butian had joined forces to push Chu Yang to the point of no return. Tai Butian had already been gone for a long time. Chu Yang was buried in the sea of information, analyzing it in detail bit by bit. These materials were just words, and most of the words couldn't be trusted. However, Chu Yang wanted to find the truth and find the loopholes in this untrustworthy information. Only then could he have a preliminary idea of what to do. To find the untrustworthy information in the files that had already been filtered layer by wise and intelligent people, this kind of difficulty was indeed not small. However, Chu Yang's first step could only start from this aspect, because he did not have the intelligence network like the Heavenly Net. The current him was still just one person. Chu Yang firmly believed in one thing. There was no unbreakable loophole in any organization. Under Di Wuqingro's plan, Tai Butian's side might not be flawless. On Tai Butian's side, the people in charge of screening might not be loyal. Chu Yang used an afternoon's time to go through the files of the 87 people of Butian Pavilion in detail. In just one afternoon, Chu Yang had completely memorized them. When he closed his eyes, the information of the 87 people revolved before his eyes, no matter how big or small. Then Chu Yang walked out. Minister. Seeing Chu Yang come out, Ice Soul Saber Venerable Chungang was the first to stand up. The people behind him also stood up. Compared to when Chu Yang came, there were 7 more people. Now there were a total of 12 people. These people looked at Chu Yang with some hostility in their eyes. There was also some vigilance and distrust. However, seeing his title of minister, they still stood up and saluted. Many people had a look of ridicule in their eyes. Obviously, they were waiting to watch a good show. Minister Chang, from now on we are all colleagues. There is no need to be so polite. Chu Yang's words made the dignified Ice Soul Saber Venerable twitch his mouth a few times. Did he really think he was a senior officer? That there was no need to be so polite? However, Chu Yang's first words were Minister Chang, and not Senior Chang. This showed that Chu Yang was doing things according to the rules of the secular world, and not according to the rules of Jiang Hu. A higher official could crush people to death. Chu Yang's first words were a warning to Chang Ang. Even if you were a revered saber venerable, a revered level master. But this was the official world, under the command of the emperor. Even if a pale-faced scholar without the strength to truss up a chicken was your superior, you still had to be obedient. In Chu Yang's heart, he really did look down on this so-called revered level master. Since ancient times, there were many revered level masters. Even though they were enough to dominate Jiang Hu, but with so many revered level masters, how many of them coveted the glory and wealth of the secular world? Since you've given up your transcendent status in Jianghu to work for the secular court, then you're an official. You gave up that status, your state of mind has fallen. You are no longer a revered level master. Even if you have such a title, when facing a revered level master of the same level, Chang'ang had no hope of winning. Minister Chang, please inform all of Butian Pavilion's subordinates in Iron Cloud Citadel to gather here tomorrow morning. Chu Yang said casually, I am a new official, so I need to burn 3 fires. This is the custom of the official world. I hope that Minister Chang can assist me. Chang'ang could not help but be stunned. This newly appointed foreign minister is very direct. Even if you want to burn 3 fires, you don't need to say it out loud like this, right? That night, when Chu Yang returned to Heavenly Armament Pavilion, he heard the sound of wind in the backyard. It was Gu Duxing practicing his sword. Chu Yang stood on the steps and watched Gu Duxing practice. His mind was in deep thought. Gu Duxing, should I put him out in the open? It had to be said that Gu Duxing's current battle strength could be considered a master in Iron Cloud Citadel. With him by his side, no matter what, it would be much easier to handle. After all, he was only a 4th-level martial warrior. Looking at the sword light in the backyard, Chu Yang finally shook his head. Gu Duxing, it would be better if he did not show himself. Butian Pavilion was Butian Pavilion, and Gu Duxing's strength was what he and Chu Yang could rely on to survive in Iron Cloud Citadel. Keeping a hidden trump card, no matter the time, would always be much more reliable than revealing one's strength. Brother Chu, you are back. Gu Duxing finished his sword practice. His clothes were soaked, his face was pale. He had used up a lot of energy. It seemed that he had already activated the revered berserker sword technique. Regarding Chu Yang, Gu Duxing also felt strange. Chu Yang's age is much younger than mine. This is something I can confirm. But for some reason, every time he faced Chu Yang, he had a strange feeling that Chu Yang was much more mature than him. In terms of age, he was older, but Chu Yang never talked about age with him. This made Gu Duxing very depressed. What should he call him? You call me Brother Chu and I call you Brother Gu? Chu Yang naturally would not talk about age with Gu Duxing. If he talked about age, wouldn't he be lower? This was not a loss he could take. And Gu Duxing could not clearly see Chu Yang's strength. Was this young man a martial great master? Or a revered martial artist? In any case, Gu Duxing did not dare to guess any further. He could only guess upwards. Chapter 86. Yes, Brother Gu, our Heavenly Armament Pavilion is about to move. Chu Yang said casually, we are moving to Emerald Flow Lake. I have also accepted Butian Tai's invitation to join Butian Pavilion. Oh. Gu Duxing wiped his sweat. It was obvious that he had no interest in this Butian Pavilion. Brother Gu, I have an idea. Chu Yang and Gu Duxing walked side by side. As they walked, he said, in this world, no matter what, we must have our own strength. With just the 2 of us, it is a bit too weak. Gu Duxing's eyes lit up. What do you mean? Whether it is to survive in this world or to make a name for yourself, you must have an elite team. Even in the lower three heavens, the situation there is much worse than in the lower three heavens. Plus, there is no imperial power. It is a place where only the strong are respected. This is even more necessary. Taking a step back, even if it is just to save Gu Miaoling, you still need strength. Chu Yang said, "There are some things that I don't need to tell you. The Gu clan has its own successor. And you are the righteous of the Gu clan. For this matter, even if you become a sword emperor, if you want to save Gu Miaoling, whether the Gu clan agrees or not is another matter. What a clan needs to consider is the survival of the entire clan, not just one person." Gu Duxing's face became gloomy. Chu Yang was not wrong at all. In terms of age, by the time he reached the level of sword emperor, the two brothers of the Gu clan would already be in power. The two brothers would still be fighting each other to the death. How could they allow him to act recklessly in this place? However, if Gu Miaoling was rescued by him, firstly, he would be a member of the Gu clan, and not an outsider. Secondly, he would be a sword emperor, and no one in the Gu clan would be a match for him. Thirdly, if he married Sister Miao, he would become the son-in-law of the Gu clan, and not an outsider. It would be strange if the Gu brothers did not guard against him. Therefore, this heavenly armament pavilion needs to become stronger. Chu Yang's eyes were deep. "And you will be the first heavenly armament of this heavenly armament pavilion. If there is a first, then there is a second." Gu Duxing's eyes flashed. He showed a strong interest and said, "How do you want to develop it?" "Heavenly armament pavilion cannot be shown to the outside. It can only be developed secretly." Chu Yang rubbed his chin and said, "It's up to you to decide how to do it. I won't ask about this. Also, don't touch the heavenly armament pavilion's weapons for the time being. Leave it for our own people. As long as they are strong enough, we will give them the heavenly armament. This is a very good incentive." Gu Duxing's eyes lit up and he nodded vigorously. "That's right. Our divine weapons are an irresistible temptation to any martial artist. Secondly, for the heavenly armament pavilion's secret exhibition, we don't necessarily want experts, but we want people with great potential." Chu Yang smiled, but his eyes flashed like lightning in the night sky. "Our future is not in these lower three heavens. One day we will rush into the upper three heavens. In that supreme martial artist holy land, we will have our own position. Since these people are part of our team, they will have to follow us. In the lower three heavens, I want to conquer the world. In the upper three heavens, I want to fight in the Jianghu. Even in the upper three heavens, I want to move unhindered and be insufferably arrogant." Gu Duxing's face lit up. His breathing was a little hurried. "You mean, we don't want to follow other people's rules. We want to be the people who make the rules?" Chu Yang said calmly. "Whether it is the lower three heavens or the upper three heavens." "Good." Gu Duxing's eyes lit up. "Since you have such ambitions, then I, Gu Duxing, am not someone to be trifled with. Us two brothers, let's go all out and do something big." Chu Yang nodded and said deeply, "I will leave this matter to you. In this period of time, we will be busy with Butian Pavilion. No matter what, our mission in the lower three heavens is to defeat Di Wuqing Rou. This will not change." "Defeat Di Wuqing Rou." Gu Duxing muttered to himself and nodded. He did not know why Chu Yang was so obsessed with defeating Di Wuqing Rou, but he knew that since Chu Yang said so, he must have his reasons. The newly opened Heavenly Armament Pavilion only lasted for 3 to 5 days before it closed. Gu Duxing also immediately moved to Emerald Flow Lake. This guy's swift and decisive personality was revealed at this moment. With Chu Yang's large amount of gold and silver as a foundation, Gu Duxing immediately started to make a big move. He built a 3-feet-high wall around Emerald Flow Lake. He immediately took over this place for fun. Chu Yang did not know that Gu Duxing was doing all this. Chu Yang's original intention was to take over the big island in the center. He did not expect that Gu Duxing would use a feather as a token of authority and directly encircle it. Not only did he encircle the entire Emerald Flow Lake, but he also encircled Emerald Shadow Mountain, which was close to Emerald Flow Lake. Moreover, he encircled a few hundred acres of land around it. Even though this place did not have any residences or government offices, it was a beautiful place to visit. There were all kinds of shops, such as brothels and gambling dens, all of which were profitable businesses. Gu Duxing's encirclement naturally made others unwilling, so they started to cause a ruckus. Gu Duxing's cold face was like that of a zombie overseer. His face told people not to come close. The officials from the Ironcloud Citadel's inspection office came to ask questions, but they were all beaten back by Gu Duxing. He glared at them. This is the order of the emperor. If you have the ability, don't come looking for me, go look for the emperor. Aside from the money Chu Yang gave him to build the encirclement and hire workers, he did not spend a single cent. It was completely an empty deal. And at this time Chu Yang, Great Official Chu, was taking over as a new official. 3 fires were burning hot. Today I have gathered all my colleagues here for 2 reasons. First, I am a new official, so I need to get to know you all. Once I am familiar with you all, it will be easier to carry out my work. Second, there are a few things I do not understand, so I need to ask all of you clearly. In other words, a new official will make 3 fires, and today I will burn all of them. The 2 pavilion masters were sitting next to him. On the side, there were a few people sitting with medicine boxes in front of them. Chu Yang looked at the 85 people below. With a serious face and hands behind his back, he paced back and forth. With one glance, he could tell that these 85 people, including Chang'an and Chen Yutong, were not part of the group that welcomed Du Shiqing. Furthermore, those people appeared to be much more elite than these people. Tai Butian really did have a trick up his sleeve. Who am I? Even if you have not seen me, you must have heard of me. Compared to all of you, I am just a scholar with no martial skills. But since I have accepted your request, I must make Butian Pavilion the best it can be. I hope that all of you will cooperate and not make it difficult for me. Chu Yang smiled coldly. If it is difficult for me, it will be even more difficult for everyone. I can guarantee this. There was a commotion below. Whispers could be heard continuously. All of the people here were Jianghu people. They all felt that Chu Yang's actions were ridiculous. Trying to scare people? Which one of us is not putting our lives on the line? Can you scare us? A scholar? A scholar wants to control Butian Pavilion? Chang'an and Chen Yutong looked at each other. They did not know whether to laugh or cry. Usually, a new official would make 3 fires burn, but to threaten like this, Official Chu was really the first person to do this. This is not Jianghu. There are no Jianghu rules. This is not an army, but the rules are much stricter than the army. Chu Yang looked down and did not give anyone a chance to speak. From the very beginning, he showed his extreme power. Next, I want to ask everyone who has any objections to my actions. If you have any objections, you can leave. I will not stop you. Another wave of bitter laughter. Once you enter this place, it is an absolute secret. Leave? If he backed out, it would be a dead end. Good. If no one has any objections, then it means that everyone agrees with my position. Then from now on, if anyone dares to go against my words, only death awaits. Chapter 87. No one answered. Everyone was looking at each other. It was as if Chu Yang was singing a one-man show. Next, I will call out your name. Please step forward. Chu Yang did not care. This was what he had expected. He picked up the name at the top of the file and read, Lu Zhuguang. Below the stage, a one-eyed man reluctantly answered and stepped forward. Lu Zhuguang, 3rd grade martial master from Wannan. 3 years ago, you fought with an enemy and lost one eye. The enemy was Great Zhao's Clear Spring County's wanderer Ping Wu Ying. Is that right? Lu Zhuguang slowly nodded and said, Official Chu, this is something that everyone knows. What he meant was, it is useless for you to say this. Please step forward. Chu Yang took 2 steps forward and placed his hand on Lu Zhuguang's wrist. The Dark Spirit Great Technique and Heaven-Splitting Divine Technique were used at the same time. Lu Zhuguang's wrist had just retracted, but Chu Yang had already retracted his hand. His eyes suddenly turned into 2 cold swords. Your specialty is hidden weapons. You are a disciple of the Sun Clan of Wannan. The Sun Clan is famous for their hidden weapons. The Sun Clan's hidden weapons have a special characteristic. They are light on the left and heavy on the right. 3 on the left and 7 on the right. Together with their unique mental cultivation, they can fly out of the hand. Is that right? That's right. Official Chu is indeed brilliant. Lu Zhuguang's words were either complimentary or sarcastic. However, his heart skipped a beat. This matter was related to the Sun clan's martial arts. It could be said to be top secret, but Chu Yang had said it out loud. However, although the Sun clan's hidden weapons techniques are brilliant, there is a restriction to their light on the left and heavy on the right. Every Sun clan member has a habitual action. When facing an enemy, their right eye is usually closed or squinted. In other words, they only use their left eye to aim at the enemy. In other words, the Sun clan member's left eye is the most important. Without their left eye, their hidden weapons are basically useless. Although it is hard for the enemy to defend against it, it is also very demanding on the user. And you, Lu Zhuguang, your left eye was the one that was blinded by the enemy, but your hidden weapons techniques are still very accurate. 3 on the left and 7 on the right. Why is that? As soon as these words came out, the expressions of everyone present changed. They all understood the meaning of Chu Yang's words. Lu Zhuguang's expression changed, and he said, "It is precisely because my left eye is crippled that Zhuguang painstakingly cultivated my right eye to replace my left eye." Official Chu, could it be that after a person falls once, he can't get up again? Chu Yang didn't pay attention to his explanation and coldly said, "But when I checked your meridians just now, the meridians of both your eyes are intact, and the meridians of your missing left eye are still intact. As we all know, no matter if it's a knife, a sword, or a fist, the damage to the meridians will spread outwards in a radial shape. In serious cases, the meridians of the entire brain will be destroyed and deformed. As for you, even the meridians around your lost left eye are still intact. However, in your report, you said that Ping Wuing's fist smashed into your eye socket, causing your eye to explode. Lu Zhuguang, your enemy really cherishes you. He only blinded your eyes and did not damage your meridians in the slightest. A martial master like Ping Wuing is actually able to control his meridians with such precision. This is truly admirable. Our pavilion master Cheng is a revered saber master, and such precise control. Lu Zhuguang, why don't you ask pavilion master Cheng if he can do it?" Chu Yang sneered. "The imperial palace has its own imperial doctors, and our Butian pavilion's doctors are right here. Every one of them can clearly examine you. Lu Zhuguang, what else do you have to say?" When Chu Yang said this, the faces of Chang'ong and Chan Yutong, who were sitting on the stage, changed greatly. What Chu Yang said was the basic principle of martial arts injuries. Every word was the truth. How could they not know? Crippling someone's eye without damaging their meridians. Not to mention a martial master, even revered saber master Chang'ong would not have this kind of ability. Even a saber emperor would not be able to do this. To be able to do this, one had to be a martial monarch. If Lu Zhuguang's injury was really like what Chu Yang said, then there was only one possibility. Lu Zhuguang was a spy. This injury was intentional. Other than this explanation, there was no other reason. Lu Zhuguang took a step back. His face was completely pale. Beside Chu Yang, the white-bearded doctor had already stood up and was about to walk towards him. Lu Zhuguang's face showed a look of despair. He suddenly laughed out loud. "Not bad, little kid, you are very powerful. I, Lu Xiaocheng, did not expect that you would be able to see through me." "That's right, Grandpa's Lu Xiaocheng. The real Lu Zhuguang died in Grandpa's hands long ago. Haha, even though you exposed me, don't think you can get anything from me. In order to be a spy, you did not hesitate to cripple one of your eyes. Haha, using such a trick would naturally make people sympathize with you. Moreover, they would not check the injury of your eye. After all, to cripple one of your eyes to become a spy is an unimaginable thing. And you actually used this misconception to your advantage." Chu Yang sneered. "But you did not expect that in front of me. There is no such thing as a misconception." Lu Xiaocheng sneered. "So what? It's just death." Cheng Yang's face turned bright red. He stood up angrily. "Lu Xiaocheng. Bastard. Then, the 2 assassination attempts in Chongyang County were also because you leaked the information, causing them to fail on the verge of success?" Lu Xiaocheng laughed out loud. "Meat delivered to my door, how can I not eat it?" Cheng Yang's whole body began to tremble. The 2 assassins who went to assassinate Great Zhao's generals, one of them was Cheng Yang's brother. He did not expect that everything was under the control of the enemy. He went to die in vain. For a moment, he could not help but hate so much that even his eyes turned red. At the same time, a deep sense of self-blame welled up in his heart. A spy was hidden in his own team and he usually thought highly of him. But now, he had sent the lives of his comrades and his brother into the enemy's trap. "I'll kill you." Chang'an roared and was about to jump up. "Wait, capture him alive!" Chun Yutong hurriedly shouted. At this time it was more useful to capture alive than dead. Who knew if there were any accomplices among the more than 80 people? Haha. Chun Yutong, you don't need to be delusional. Since I have been seen through, I am not prepared to live. Lu Xiaocheng laughed wildly. Suddenly his body shook. His remaining eye rolled back, and black blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. He had hidden a highly toxic poison in his mouth. With a bang, Lu Xiaocheng's body fell to the ground. It twitched and then there was no more movement. Chang'an roared and kicked the body of this Lu Xiaocheng. He shouted, "Check who this Lu Xiaocheng is. I want to destroy his entire clan." Chang'an was ashamed. A spy like this had been under his command for such a long time, and he did not know about it. Moreover, he had organized one operation after another, constantly sending the lives of his brothers into the enemy's trap. Furthermore, he had even sacrificed the life of his most valued younger brother. If Chu Yang had not caught this guy today, who knew how many times he would have fallen into the same trap? Everyone looked at Chu Yang with a different expression. This newly appointed guest minister was really not simple. On the first day of his appointment, he had already caught the spy. This was tantamount to saving their lives. Who knew who would go next? Maybe it would be their turn. But no matter who went, it would be a dead end. "Wait!" Chu Yang shouted in a deep voice. "What other orders does Minister Chu have?" Chang Eng's attitude towards Chu Yang had already taken a 310-degree turn. He had seriously neglected his duty, but Chu Yang had corrected his mistake. Although the other party was only a teenager, and his martial power was low, but his keen observation and superior intelligence made people admire him. Chapter 88. Although there were still some knots in his heart, the feeling of resistance had lessened a lot. Lu Xiaocheng is not necessarily his real name, right? Chu Yang sneered. Since this kind of death warrior has already been exposed and committed suicide on the spot, why would he leave his real name as a clue for us to investigate? If we investigate again and again, I'm afraid we'll be led to another group of powerful enemies. We have to be careful about this. Minister, you're right. Chang'an was shocked and said seriously. He couldn't help but admire this young minister more and more. Vice Pavilion Master Chun Yutong also revealed a thoughtful expression. What we need to investigate is this person's appearance, martial arts background, and physical characteristics to confirm this person's identity. His testimony cannot be trusted. This is the first step. Chu Yang said, the second step, although the name Lu Xiaocheng cannot be trusted, there is one person who can be trusted. That is Clear Spring County's wanderer Ping Wu Ying. This person must be captured. At that time when we were investigating this spy, we must have investigated Ping Wu Ying. And Ping Wu Ying must have given a definite answer. In other words, Ping Wu Ying must have been involved in this plot. Although he is not the mastermind, he is definitely the enemy. Ping Wu Ying and his clan must not be let off. Yes, Chun Yutong said. I will immediately arrange for people to capture Ping Wu Ying and interrogate him severely. No need. Just kill him with a knife. Interrogation will not yield any results. Chu Yang said with certainty, for a conspiracy between two countries like this, Ping Wu Ying is not qualified to participate in it. I estimate that when we catch him, it will be the end of the line. Don't have such extravagant hopes. We have to give it a try. Who knows, we might be able to catch a big fish, Chang'an insisted. For such a big mistake, only by atoning for it with merit could he make up for it. And Ping Wu Ying was the most direct opportunity. Therefore, Chang'an would not let go of such an opportunity. Up to you. Chu Yang said casually. Also, Wan'an Sun Clan also gave this person a family certificate. In other words, the Sun Clan is also one of the participants in this conspiracy. Chu Yang's eyes turned cold. He slowly scanned the faces of everyone present and said softly, the Sun family of Wan'an must be eliminated. Whenever his gaze landed on someone's face, that person would feel as if they were being stared at by a cold, venomous snake. They couldn't help but shiver all over. And when Chu Yang spat out the words eliminate, His murderous aura also overflowed, making people shudder in fear. I'll have to trouble Lord Cheng with this matter. Chu Yang nodded at Chang'ong and said politely. Although his tone was polite, it was an order. This was Chu Yang's second probing move after the first one. To fully control Butian Pavilion, Chang'ang's attitude was extremely important. A look of struggle appeared on Chang'ang's face. His expression changed several times before he slowly lowered his head and said, "Leave it to this old man." Chu Yang smiled with satisfaction and said, "As for the clue that we found the spy, it will be completely abandoned from today onwards. Can no longer be used. Can we use that clue to beat the enemy at their own game and make a profit?" Chen Yutong pondered and asked. "No. We cannot guarantee that there are no spies among the remaining people, but as long as there are, the news of today's purge will spread. Then the enemy will also use that clue to beat us at our own game. This is a dead end." Chu Yang's expression changed. It seemed that this Chen Yutong still had some brains. It was just that he didn't see enough. Yes, the minister's words are reasonable. Chen Yutong's forehead was sweating profusely. He really didn't think of this. Chu Yang casually picked up the second file. His gloomy eyes swept through it, and he slowly asked, "Meng Yuda, who is this?" In the third row below the stage, a bearded man's face suddenly turned ashen. The people next to him all turned their heads and looked at him. Their eyes revealed a strong sense of alertness. Chu Yang's clear eyes looked at the face of this man named Meng Yuda. He quietly asked, "Meng Yuda, do you want to commit suicide now, or wait for me to expose you before you commit suicide?" The whiskers on Meng Yuda's face trembled. He suddenly took a step forward and sternly said, "Pretty boy, don't think that you're some minister just because you flattered the crown prince and made His Highness the crown prince favor you. This old man has always done things with a clear conscience. Out of the dozens of Butian Pavilion missions, the only one who successfully assassinated a target and escaped unscathed was me. This old man gave his all, risked his life for Iron Cloud, and you dare to say that this old man is a spy?" When he said this, everyone suddenly remembered. In the first 7 assassinations, only Meng Yuda's group successfully completed the mission. The other groups were completely wiped out. Moreover, at that time Chang'ong and Chen Yutong held a celebration party for Meng Yuda and promoted him from a small team leader to a small team leader. How could he be a spy? Lian Chang'ong also frowned as he looked at Chu Yang. This Meng Yuda was an expert that he wanted to promote and train. If this person was really a spy, then he would really lose all his face. Chu Yang calmly looked at him. After several assassination attempts, the 4 groups in the southeast direction all failed. Only you, Meng Yuda, went to the southeast and succeeded. That is where Lu Shaocheng's information was concentrated. It is also the territory of the Sun family in Wannan. Not only did you complete the mission, you returned safely without any losses. Let me ask you, the others all met with mishaps. Why did you come back alive? The other 4 groups' martial arts were not lower than yours. They also had more people than you. Moreover, their targets were much weaker than yours. Without exception, they all failed. You came back victorious. Could it be that this Lu Shaocheng only knew about the plans of the other 4 groups and did not know about your group? This is impossible, right? If I remember correctly, you and he belonged to the second group. These plans were made after the second group accepted the mission. In other words, Lu Shaocheng clearly knew about this plan. Before he could confirm that person's true identity, Chu Yang could only call him Lu Shaocheng. Chu Yang coldly looked at him. "Your luck is that good?" Chang'ong sighed heavily. His face was ashen. From this point of view, this Meng Yuda was very suspicious. Could it be that my personal ability is not good enough? Meng Yuda put on a look of righteous indignation, but his eyes secretly flashed with a trace of panic. "No." Chu Yang slowly shook his head and said with certainty, "You are a spy." "You say I am a spy? Show me the evidence." Meng Yuda shouted. "Even though we are part of the Iron Cloud government, I am not an arrestor of the Ministry of Justice." Chu Yang said lightly, "I only need to suspect and I can kill. What evidence do I need? Come take him." Once the order was given, 2 people immediately jumped at Meng Yuda. One of them was Chang'ong. Chang'ong was already seething with anger. He did not expect that when Chu Yang gave the order, he would rush out in front of so many subordinates. At this moment, He had already admitted that he was Chu Yang's subordinate. This was equivalent to completely confirming Chu Yang's position. Chang'ang's face had already turned into the color of pig liver. He was so angry that the skin on his face was about to burst. If this Meng Yude was a spy, then there was a spy right under his nose, and there was more than one. And he had helped the spy get promoted and become rich, and considered the spy his confidant. Chapter 89. Wait! Meng Yude shouted, this pretty boy is just spouting nonsense. Do you really believe him? For a new pretty boy, you want to kill a brother who has contributed so much? Meng Yude, if you weren't a spy, I would have cleared your name no matter what. What are you afraid of? Chu Yang said coldly. Meng Yude was stunned. Suddenly, he laughed and said, since Tai Butian is using such a pretty boy to hold power, where is there a place for us? I don't want to argue. I'll take my leave now. Suddenly, his body shot out of the window like a shooting star. But someone was faster than him. In a flash, he was already standing at the window. It was Deputy Pavilion Master Chen Yutong. With a bang, the two palms collided. Chen Yutong's body shook violently. His face turned green. He suddenly shouted angrily, you are obviously a martial great master. Why have you been pretending to be a martial master? He had always thought that the other party was a martial master and only used 30% of his strength. He didn't expect the other party's strength to come at him like a raging wave. He didn't have time to activate his internal energy, and almost suffered a great loss. As soon as he said this, the atmosphere that had been stirred up by Meng Yude suddenly became serious. Just the fact that he was hiding his strength was already very suspicious. Meng Yude landed on the ground and staggered. Suddenly, he laughed bitterly and said, forget it, forget it. Since you don't believe me, I'll just die and be done with it. If I can't even believe my own brother, what else in this world can make me reluctant to leave? As he said this, he raised his palm and hit the top of his head. On his face, there was a disheartened look. Brother Meng, wait. A burly man beside him suddenly took a step forward and reached out to grab his wrist. He said anxiously, there will always be a day when the truth comes to light. If you are innocent, you will be innocent. Why do you have to be so reckless? Before he finished speaking, Meng Yude flipped his wrist, and the palm that was originally slapping towards his head suddenly grabbed out, grabbing the burly man's wrist. His right hand touched his waist, and with a clang there was a flash of brilliance, and a long sword was already placed horizontally across the burly man's neck. Let me go. Meng Yude laughed sinisterly, otherwise, I can drag one of you down with me before I die. You'd rather kill and threaten than stay and explain. If it's not a spy, then what is it? Chu Yang looked at him from afar. Using a strange rhythm, he slowly said, Meng Yude, although you are a spy, I have to admire you. Great Zhao's selection of spy candidates is also very good. Where did they find you, bunch of tough bones? Meng Yude sneered. Holding the sharp blade, his eyes flashed as he slowly moved towards the door. He replied unconsciously, how can there be anyone under Lord Diwu who is afraid of death? As soon as the words left his mouth, his expression changed drastically. In the main hall, everyone snorted angrily at the same time. With these words, he had admitted his identity. As expected, he is a Jian spy. Chang'ang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. A feeling of shame suddenly rose up. At this moment, he was so depressed that he wanted to commit suicide to atone for his sins. But Chen Yutong looked at Chu Yang in surprise. This Meng Yude had a strong will. He was still struggling to survive even in such a desperate situation. He was obviously a vicious and evil person. Such a person would usually be very tight-lipped. Why did he reveal a flaw after Chu Yang said a few words? Chu Yang's face was indifferent, but his heart was laughing coldly. His soul had merged with the underworld spirit Dharma body, and he had used all his mind power to say those words. Moreover, at such a critical moment, when Meng Yude's nerves were the most stretched, he suddenly said such a sentence with a strong hypnotic intent. Meng Yude's mind was still focused on the surrounding movements. How could he have the time to defend against Chu Yang's mental attack? Naturally, he said what was in his heart. But this sentence caused him to be doomed eternally. No need to worry. Kill the two of them together. Chu Yang looked coldly at Meng Yude, who was moving towards the door while holding the big man hostage. He said coldly, he didn't hold others hostage, but held this person hostage. Just now they were already enemies, but this person actually went forward to be held hostage? And it was so easy to get him? What's the point of playing such a clumsy trick? Kill them both. When this sentence came out, everyone was stunned. Meng Yude and the big man he was holding hostage were stunned at the same time. Then, the two of them suddenly roared and separated. They pulled out their swords and sabers and rushed out. This kind of action confirmed Chu Yang's guess. It made the people who were doubtful at first understand. No wonder this big man was so cooperative. No wonder he took a hostage the moment he made a move. No wonder Meng Yude and the big man had no choice but to risk their lives. Since Chu Yang had already spoken these words, it meant that he had already seen through their disguise. Moreover, Chu Yang's words were still ringing in their ears. I only need to suspect you to kill. Why would I need any evidence? It gave the two of them an illusion. No matter what, there was no way they could survive. They might as well let go and fight to the death. Even if they died, the news would spread and their families would be safe. Moreover, they might not necessarily die, because they were already at the door. They only needed to move forward 10 feet and they would be able to escape. Even though they might not be able to survive, it was much safer than being trapped in this hall. The two of them thought they had succeeded and were secretly delighted. However, they did not expect Chu Yang to expose them, but the distance was not far. As long as they risked their lives, they might be able to get out. As long as they could get out of here, they would naturally be met in Iron Cloud Citadel. Chang'ang roared. Suddenly, a bright saber light appeared in the hall. The saber light flashed and 2 short screams were heard. At the door there were 4 bloody corpses. Chang'ang stood at the door with a saber in his hand and a murderous look on his face. 2 Jains were killed by him with a single slash. Minister, I accept my punishment. Chang'ang turned around and faced Chu Yang. He did not raise his head as he spoke with difficulty. His voice was dry. Chang'ang's heart was ashamed to the extreme. Just a moment ago, he was almost fooled again. If Meng Yude used his accomplices to escape, then his accomplices would still be here. The danger to Butian Pavilion would not be reduced. He hated himself for almost being fooled. If Chu Yang was not here, then he would have been fooled. There were so many spies in his team. He was muddle-headed and could not see people clearly. He was fooled like a clown. How could he still have the face to be the pavilion master of Butian Pavilion? Don't apologize. This matter is not over yet. Chu Yang coldly looked at him. Looking at the stack of documents in his hand, he casually picked one up and casually read it out loud. Who is Feng Changji? Stand up. Kill yourself or be killed. Choose one. In the end, Chang'ang and Chun Yutong almost wanted to find a crack in the ground and hide in it. Including the two of them, there were 87 people in total. Chu Yang actually found one. No matter which one it was, the evidence was conclusive. Even if there was no evidence, Chu Yang's mental and psychological methods made it clear. The most amazing thing was that when it came to the first person, Chu Yang did not even read the name. He only glanced around. The last person looked left and right, then smiled bitterly and walked out. It will be published on the 1st of next month. I hope everyone will support it. I have been looking forward to this day for a long time. When it is published, it will also be the time when the first big secret will be revealed. I believe that I will not be wrong. I will not be wrong. This book is an adventure. Those who are familiar with my brothers and sisters should be able to see what I am doing. Yes, in this book I am trying to be resourceful, to be in control, to see the whole situation. From this book onwards, I will not look at the whole world with one person's eyes. What I want is to have a more comprehensive grasp, to be able to improve myself. This book was the real control I had over the world I had created in the book. I really hope to let our main character, Chu Yang, control the heavens. Complete control and not just a simple conquest. Therefore, this is what I thought and this is what I wrote. Therefore, I hope that everyone can understand and accompany me. Together. I hope that after the heavy foreshadowing, there will be a blossoming climax. It will be completely gorgeous and rotten. Brothers and sisters, who is willing to accompany me, to conquer the heavens. Chapter 90. This guy looked at Chu Yang and gave him a thumbs up, Minister. You are really good. Even as a spy, I only know one person's identity. You actually managed to identify all of them without missing a single one. What is even more outrageous is that you only looked at the information and found all of them. Just based on your eyesight, I am convinced. Oh. Chu Yang closed the file and waved his hand. He raised his head and looked at this person. This time, without waiting for others to do anything, Chun Yutong personally took the file back. In just one day, Chu Yang had established his absolute authority. Without mentioning anything else, the existence of these spies could completely bury all of these people. As long as they did not make any big mistakes, they could continue to be spies. Chu Yang had saved all of their lives, and not just once. Regardless of whether Chu Yang was young or not, and regardless of Chu Yang's cultivation level, his eyesight alone could be said to be unparalleled in the world. Chu Yang did not even move a finger, nor did he display his martial strength, but he was able to subdue this group of unruly Butian Pavilion members. You are also a spy? You admit it yourself? That's good, it saves me a lot of trouble. Chu Yang smiled and said, or can you tell me something? That person smiled and said, you did not ask those people before. Since I am standing out myself, you should not ask. Chu Yang nodded his head in understanding. The moment he saw this person calmly stand out, he did not have any hope. This person was clearly prepared to die. That was why he was so calm. Chu Yang gently tapped the table with his finger and slowly said, I understand. You people other than Di Wuqingrou's absolute loyalty, your families, children, and elders are all in the hands of others. For the time being, we do not have any ability to save them, so we do not have the conditions to instigate your rebellion. That is why I will not ask. Since it is like this, I will not ask you. If a person wants to commit suicide, it is quite easy. Chu Yang smiled. Butian Pavilion really has a good leader. Minister Chu's schemes and eyesight are not much different from the legendary Di Wuqingrou. In fact, I really want to see you guys fight and see who will be the final winner. Unfortunately, I will not be able to see it. The man smiled as he spoke, but a trace of black blood was slowly seeping out from the corner of his mouth. Before he stood up, he had already bitten open the poison sac. Actually, we have never seen Di Wuqingrou. That person looked at Chu Yang with a strange look in his eyes. Then he stood upright and stopped breathing. After a long while, his body fell down. However, his last sentence seemed to have a hidden meaning. The entire hall was filled with the smell of blood, and it was completely silent. Chang'ong and the others were stunned. These people were all spies, but none of them gave in. One by one they were dragged out, but they all died in front of him. Most of them committed suicide. What kind of methods were used to train such a group of people? This was especially true for the last one, who died with a smile on his face. Chu Yang looked at the corpse on the ground with a heavy expression. Di Wuqingrou's subordinates, how many of them are there? He suddenly felt that the name Di Wuqingrou was like a huge mountain in front of him. At first, Chu Yang only knew that Di Wuqingrou was unbelievably strong. But his evaluation of Di Wuqingrou had risen to an unprecedented height after today's events. An unprecedentedly strong opponent. Chu Yang smiled faintly. He gathered his thoughts and looked at the remaining people in the hall. He said, there are still some left, but I do not have enough evidence here. For the time being, I will not call out names. In any case, there will not be any movements in the near future. I hope that the remaining people will voluntarily withdraw from Butian Pavilion as soon as possible. As for those who are in contact with Di Wuqingrou and have not made a decision, I also hope that you will make a decision soon. Pausing for a moment, Chu Yang slowly said, Butian Pavilion was founded not long ago. We came here for two reasons. First, we want to make contributions in this chaotic world. Second, we want to earn glory and wealth for our families. However, being a spy, is not an easy thing to do. As long as you voluntarily withdraw, I will let bygones be bygones. As for those who voluntarily report, not only will they not be at fault, they will be rewarded. This seat solemnly promises this point here. Not only will I not pursue the matter, but I will also keep it a secret. As he spoke, his eyes slowly swept across the dozens of people below. Everyone who was looked at by him felt as if they were being stared at by a poisonous snake. A cold feeling rose from their tailbones all the way to the back of their heads. From now on, I only have one afternoon and one evening, Chu Yang coldly said. Pavilion Lord Cheng and below, 2 people in a quarter of an hour. Everyone can go in and talk with me. From tomorrow morning, those who are indecisive will all be eliminated. I will not tolerate them. Pavilion Lords, do you have anything else to add? Chu Yang asked. His current question was somewhat hypocritical. But as soon as he asked, Cheng Ong and Chun Yutong straightened their bodies and said, as long as Minister Chu makes a decision, we will follow it. Chu Yang smiled with satisfaction and said, if that is the case, then from now on I will wait for you at my place. After he finished speaking, he stood up and turned to leave. Behind him, everyone stood up at the same time and watched him leave. This minister is really amazing. Someone muttered. That's right. That eyesight and wisdom. There's really nothing to say. I don't feel guilty at all. But when he stares at me, I feel fucking lower my head. I feel guilty for no reason. Yes, I also have this feeling. I just don't know what level of martial arts this minister is at. Someone fancied endlessly. TSK, you don't understand. You are simply nitpicking. With Minister Chu's brain, even if he doesn't know martial arts, what can he do? Haven't you seen Di Wuqingro? That's true. But then again, this minister looks like he doesn't know anything about martial arts. He looks refined, weak and handsome. But one look at him makes people feel cold all over. As everyone was talking, they saw that Cheng Ong had already stood up and was walking towards Chu Yang's room. Suddenly, there was another round of discussion. Guess how many people will be eliminated this time? Who knows? But one is already dead. My goodness, that guy was with us every day, and we didn't even notice anything. To be honest, this minister really saved our lives this time. If we were to unknowingly go out on a mission like this. That's true. When you say this, the back of my neck feels cold. Not long after, Cheng Ong came back from inside and gave Chun Yutong a look. Chun Yutong sighed and also went inside. Look, the 2 pavilion masters are already convinced. Since the establishment of Butian Pavilion, besides Butian Tai, who else can make the 2 pavilion masters so convinced? This minister is really not simple. TSK. What kind of joke is this? Right now, we are fighting for hegemony. One person's bravery can only decide one place. But superior wisdom can decide the country and the world. How can this be compared? Submitting to a person like the minister, without mentioning anything else, at least they won't die in vain. That makes sense. Chapter 91. As one person after another entered, Chu Yang began to observe from the outside. When he entered his own room, he was still probing. However, after everyone had gone through once, he still did not find anything. Perhaps there was nothing inside. Perhaps there was someone else. But it was a sly old fox who would not easily give himself away. Chu Yang did not have high hopes of finding anything, so he simply let everyone pass. After everyone had gone through once, it was already close to midnight. The people waiting in the hall did not dare to move, and no one said they were hungry. They just waited obediently. Chu Yang finally walked out with a heavy face. His heavy face made everyone nervous. They looked at Chu Yang's face. It seemed that the situation was not good. Could it be that there were many people in the dark? Under everyone's watchful eyes, Chu Yang finally opened his mouth. I am very sad. Chu Yang frowned and let out a long sigh. I thought that since everyone is from Iron Cloud, no matter how you look at it, you should have a passion and a deep love for your home and country. In front of you, our 2,800,000 brothers have already turned into souls, and I really did not think that we would. There was complete silence. Seemed like there really was such a thing. If you were from Great Zhao, then there would be nothing wrong with doing this. Because you are doing this for your country, for your home. But you are from Iron Cloud. For a few taels of silver, for the empty promise of others, you are willing to hand over tens of thousands of your countrymen to others? Let them trample on you? Let them humiliate you as they wish. Are you even human? Chu Yang seemed to be very emotional. His face was flushed red. The 70 or so martial great masters below kept quiet out of fear. I will say it again. If someone from Great Zhao committed such a crime, I will only kill him. But if it is someone from Iron Cloud, then I will exterminate his clan. Chu Yang asked sternly, everyone, do you think it should be done or not? It should be done. The crowd below shouted. It should be done. For this kind of bastard who forgot his ancestors, exterminating his clan is already a light punishment. It should be written into the history books and be cursed for all eternity. Since everyone can realize their mistakes, I will not say anything more. I only hope that everyone can take this as a warning. Let bygones be bygones. Everyone must remember that this is the only time in your life. Chu Yang said these words in an extremely heavy and dignified tone. It was clear that the people below had never betrayed him, but they seemed to feel guilty after hearing his words. 2,800,000 brave souls have already been sacrificed, but I haven't done anything. Listening to the minister's words, it seems that there are still spies, and there are still people who are wavering. This was simply infuriating. Next, I will announce the new division of power in Heaven Mending Pavilion. From today onwards, Heaven Mending Pavilion will be divided into 3 large groups. The first group will be called Iron and Blood, and will be directly responsible to me. Iron Blood, the blood of Iron Cloud. What we need is unreserved loyalty. Chu Yang's eyes radiated a divine aura as he swept his gaze all around. He then said in a deep voice, everything in this world must be governed by laws. If the law is not strict, there will be omissions. If there are omissions, there will be losses. Once losses occur, it will be everyone's lives. Our Butian Pavilion's main purpose is to kill people, not to do business. Everyone must understand this point. Therefore, no matter who it is, they must obey Iron Blood unconditionally. Yes, I will follow the minister's instructions. Establishing Iron Blood in Heaven Mending Pavilion is a matter of course. Chu Yang nodded. He only mentioned the first rule, and the entire Heaven Mending Pavilion was tightened by one step. Obey Iron Blood unconditionally. This phrase was not just for show. The second group will be called Fierce Blood. The fierce blood of Iron Cloud, ready to go on dangerous missions at any time. This is the fist of the entire Heaven Mending Pavilion. This group is the most important of the entire Heaven Mending Pavilion. Chu Yang's eyes were full of trust as he looked at Chang'an. He sincerely said, I believe that this great and difficult task belongs to none other than official Chang. Chang'an was startled. He took a step forward and clasped his hands together. I will follow the minister's instructions. Chang'an actually saw through Chu Yang's intentions very clearly. Chu Yang wanted to gather all of Heaven Mending Pavilion's power in his hands. As long as Chang'an accepted the position of second group leader, then it would be the same as automatically resigning from the position of pavilion master. From then on, Heaven Mending Pavilion would no longer have a pavilion master, only a minister. But in the previous day, Chu Yang had not only established his own authority, but also suppressed the prestige of the 2 original pavilion masters to the point where there was nothing left. Now, even if the 2 of them were still pavilion masters, they would only exist in name. They would not have any authority. Plus, the 2 of them made such a big mistake. They did not have the face to stay in the pavilion master position. At this time they were full of guilt and regret. Chu Yang's request hit their weak spot. If they protested, they would probably be booed by the entire group. Therefore, this position of second group leader was something that Chang'an had to accept, even if he did not want to accept. Chu Yang's momentum had been established. Chang'an did not have the slightest room to fight back. Chu Yang smiled with satisfaction and said, Official Cheng's martial power is extraordinary. You are a top expert in the world. I am completely at ease. Thank you for Minister Chu's praise. Chang'an smiled bitterly, thinking to himself, this guy degraded me to the point that I'm worthless, stripped of my real power, lowered my position, and destroyed my reputation. Yet I still have to thank him. Motherfucker, this world is really wonderful. The third group will be called. Chu Yang pondered for a moment. His eyebrows raised, and he said decisively, the third group will be called Tianji. All of Heaven Mending Pavilion's intelligence will be handed over to you. This is the lifeline of Heaven Mending Pavilion. If there is a mistake, it is our lives. Therefore, Tianji was the name of Mo Tianji. The master of calculation and manipulation, Mo Tianji, was the main culprit behind Chu Yang's death in his previous life. Chu Yang purposely used this name to call the intelligence department of Heaven Mending Pavilion that he was in charge of. There was still such a powerful enemy waiting for him in front. If he slacked off a little, he would be consigned to eternal damnation in Mo Tianji's hands. Mo Tianji's terror. No one knew better than Chu Yang. Minister Chu, I am willing to take on the role of the third group's captain. I will help Bu Tianji and Minister Chu share the burden. Chen Yutong did not wait for Chu Yang to finish speaking. He took a step forward and volunteered. Chang'ong had already given in. What else could he do? He might as well do a favor at no cost. Otherwise, in the future, he would not even have a foothold in Heaven Mending Pavilion. This Minister Chu was personally brought here by Bu Tianji. It could be said that the entire Iron Cloud Nation appointed him. Why do I have to go against him? Chen Yutong thought to himself. Thank you, Captain Chen. Haha, I was just worried that there wasn't a wise and experienced leader in the Tianji First Bureau. Now that Lord Chen is willing to take up the role, I'm pleasantly surprised, Chu Yang said, overjoyed. Chapter 92. Good. Lord Chen is indeed a good man. Chu Yang praised. Then he changed his tone and said eagerly, Lord Chen, this Heavenly Secrets Division must be careful. No matter what the news is, it must be true. What I want is 100% certainty. Only then can I arrange for the Fierce Blood Brothers to carry out the mission. If the Heavenly Secrets Division's responsibility is not small, Lord Chen, this is equivalent to the lives of everyone in Butian Pavilion in your hands. The burden on your shoulders is not light. Chen Yutong was furious. This guy's mouth is so dignified, but in reality he is still seizing power. 100% certainty? This kind of thing, who can be 100% sure? Not to mention assassinating the enemy's generals, even marrying a wife could cause impotence at night. Once there is any news, this big captain will immediately discuss it with Minister Chu. Then we will carefully analyze the pros and cons together with Minister Chu. We will create a perfect plan. Chen Yutong swallowed his anger and said, when the time comes, I hope Minister Chu can take some time out of his busy schedule to ask about the Heavenly Secrets Division's intelligence for the safety of our brothers. Chen Yutong had already fallen from his position as the Vice Pavilion Master. By saying that, he was basically handing over his position as the head of the intelligence agency to someone else. It meant that he was just a machine that collected intelligence without any decision-making ability. Chu Yang's face was awkward as he said, Lord Chen, there is no need to be like this. I was just saying. There is no other meaning. Besides, I am in charge of Ironblood and the overall situation. I am already very busy. I am afraid I may not have the time. I hope Minister Chu can consider the overall situation. Think about our brothers. Chen Yutong was cursing this guy's shamelessness in his heart. It was clearly you who forced me to give up my power. Now you are still hypocritically making all sorts of excuses, sigh. Chu Yang sighed and said reluctantly, since it is like this, forget it. I will fight with these old bones. The people below all curled their lips. Next, I will announce the division of the three big teams. Chu Yang quietly got rid of 2 pavilion masters and let them be the big team leaders. With all the power in his hands, he was secretly happy. However, the way Chu Yang casually assigned them made it seem as if he had been with these people for decades. What a person was good at, what a person wasn't good at, which person would be able to make the most out of the 3 brigades. Everything was in order. Every one of them was assigned to a position most suitable for them. The 3 groups of people stood separately in the hall. Their roles were clearly defined. One could imagine how much more effective this division of labor was compared to when everyone was squeezed together to eat from the same big pot. Chang'ong and Chen Yutong had some complaints in their hearts, but after seeing such a distribution, they couldn't help but be convinced. Without anyone noticing, Chu Yang completed his control over Butian Pavilion. Chu Yang looked at Heavenly Secrets, but in his heart, he was wondering how things were going on Gu Duxing's end. Within the imperial residence, frowning, Tai Butian looked at the person before her. Wait a little longer. Opposite him sat 2 officials in luxurious robes, looking anxious. Both of them came because of Gu Duxing's occupation of Emerald Flow Lake. After all, Gu Duxing used a chicken feather as an arrow to command authority. They didn't dare to act rashly and could only come to ask for instructions. who knew that since they arrived in the afternoon, it was already late at night. Tai Butian's attitude was extremely ambiguous. She didn't say yes but also didn't say no. She just kept saying wait a little longer. Wait a little longer. She had already said wait a little longer more than 10 times, but the two of them were not allowed to leave. Every time the two of them asked to go back, Her Highness would only say, wait a little longer. Their hearts were already like 15 buckets of water, up and down, up and down. Finally, a voice came from outside. Reporting to Her Highness, Official Chung requests an audience. Please enter the side hall. Saying this, Tai Butian slowly stood up. Please wait a little longer. I will be back soon. The two officials hurriedly nodded and smiled. She is very busy, please go ahead. Tai Butian nodded and walked out. Side hall. Chung'ang strode in. After bowing to Tai Butian, he wanted to say something but stopped. How is it? Tai Butian asked quietly. He is too good at reading people. Chang'ang stammered for a long time before finally squeezing out a sentence. The current Butian pavilion is already his world. Oh? He used his martial strength to intimidate? No, he found a traitor. He executed us on the spot and cut the Gordian knot with a swift knife, taking away Mayan Chan Yutong's power. From the beginning to the end, he was just a weak scholar. Chang'ang sighed, his face full of shame. Oh. Tai Butian raised her head in shock and murmured so fast. Yes. And the brothers below are all sincerely convinced by him. Sincerely convinced. Tai Butian stood up and paced back and forth a few steps. He also believed that Chu Yang would definitely be able to gain control of Butian Pavilion. But he really didn't expect it to be so fast. Moreover, he actually achieved such an effect without using his martial strength. This gave him a new understanding of Chu Yang's ability. After thinking for a while, she said, you can go. Watching Chang'ang walk out, Tai Butian raised her head and thought quietly. She murmured, since he has such ability, then why not give Emerald Flow Lake to him? What's the harm? You must know that if you suspect someone, don't use them. Chu Yang and Tai Butian first agreed that Emerald Flow Lake would only be a part of it. But now, Gu Duxing had completely taken over Emerald Flow Lake. This was worlds apart from the agreement. Even though it was beyond her expectations, Tai Butian still gave it to her. She was just waiting to see if Chu Yang could control Butian Pavilion. That was all. If he didn't have the ability and couldn't control it, then she wouldn't give anything. But now that Chu Yang had such ability, even if Chu Yang asked for the whole world, as long as Tai Butian could afford it, she would give it to him. The two officials in the hall communicated with each other with their eyes. They both had a bad premonition. It seemed like this Emerald Flow Lake official had really spoken. But, if it was true, the official only needed to say a few words to suppress this matter. Why drag it on like this? I've made the two of you wait for a long time. Tai Butian walked over slowly and said with a smile, I've been caught up in some trivial matters and couldn't help myself. Please forgive me. The two hurriedly said they didn't dare. You were talking about Emerald Flow Lake, right? Tai Butian rubbed her forehead and said in distress, my memory is not very good. Yes, about Emerald Flow Lake. What instructions does the Grand Prince have? I heard that person's attitude was very bad? Tai Butian frowned and asked with some displeasure. Grand Prince, that young man is really unreasonable. He actually sealed off the entire Emerald Flow Lake and made it his own. Moreover, he told the public that it was the Grand Prince's idea. This matter has caused a lot of public anger. If it isn't stopped soon, I'm afraid it will cause a big commotion in the capital. The person who spoke in front of Tai Butian was a fat man. Tai Butian's displeased tone and expression seemed to give him some kind of hint. He thought that Tai Butian was dissatisfied with that guy and couldn't help but feel emboldened. Great public anger? 'Cause a big commotion? Tai Butian raised the corner of her mouth and revealed a mocking smile. Official Wang. You are a great scholar. When I was young I was taught by you and learned a lot. But when you say the words great public indignation, I am greatly disappointed. Official Wang was stunned and said, Grand Prince, I don't understand. He thought to himself, could it be that I guessed wrong? Chapter 93. Official Wang's face immediately turned pale. How could he not know what Tai Butian was implying? The right prime minister was originally sentenced to be banished into the army. However, he died in prison without knowing why. After that, although Emerald Flow Lake appeared to be ownerless on the surface, it secretly belonged to your Wang clan. Tai Butian said indifferently, "Official Wang, there are dozens of shops and properties around Emerald Flow Lake." There are 18 of them, but 37 of them have the surname Wang. However, the court has never bothered with this matter. First of all, the recent years have been filled with internal and external troubles. Second of all, the 3 people from the Imperial Censorate also have properties in Emerald Flow Lake. Although it is not much, it is enough to divide the remaining 31 families equally. Haha, the annual income is not small. It is very impressive. Third, I also hope that there will be a day when you can turn back. After all, it is not easy for Iron Cloud to train an official in the Imperial Court. Your own abilities are only one aspect. There is also the support of the Imperial Court, the reputation of the people, and your achievements. For the country and the people you have made contributions. Haha. Tai Butian's tone was already tinged with coldness. The 2 officials trembled from head to toe. Their faces were dripping with sweat, and they felt as if their heads were spinning. This Emerald Flow Lake became the place where the 7 of you got rich and divided the spoils. Now, when the Imperial Court wants to expropriate it, you actually talk to me about the anger of the people. Where did this anger come from? Are you saying that the anger of the people is just the anger of the few of you? You want to manipulate the people's opinions to affect my decision. Tai Butian's eyes turned cold. He coldly shouted, "Wang Ji, do you really think that I am easy to bully because I am young?" With a thump, the 2 trembled like sieves. Their legs felt weak. They finally could not stand and knelt on the ground. Tai Butian said coldly, "What is it? Do I need to ask for your permission to expropriate Emerald Flow Lake?" "We do not dare." The 2 kowtowed like they were pounding garlic. At this moment they were filled with regret. No matter what, they did not think that Emerald Flow Lake was really the intention of the Crown Prince. Moreover, the Crown Prince was so determined. Emerald Flow Lake is the property of the country. It is a scenic spot in Ironcloud Citadel, but you are using it to fill your own pockets. This is ridiculous. As officials of the Imperial Court, all of you are receiving a salary from the Imperial Court, yet you still. This truly makes me feel extremely pained. Tai Butian painfully said, "Forget it. After all, I am still an old official. I don't want to go too far. Official Wang, please inform the other families. Half of the profits from Emerald Flow Lake will be handed over to the National Treasury. Go back." Yes, thank you for your kindness, Your Highness." The 2 of them kowtowed again and again as sweat poured down like rain. It was as if they had taken a trip around the gates of hell. "Do you still need me to send a copy of the account book to compare with these families?" Just as the 2 of them were thanking her profusely and retreating out of the door, Tai Butian seemed to be muttering something to herself. Instantly, the 2 of them tumbled down the stairs again, battered and exhausted. Tai Butian's gaze turned cold as she watched the 2 of them leave in a sorry state. He had been waiting for news from Chu Yang. But he was also waiting for these people to tell him the truth. Now that she had ascertained Chu Yang's abilities, Tai Butian made her decision. If there was still no result, then Tai Butian planned to keep the 2 of them for another day. Butian Pavilion is finally taking shape. Tai Butian looked at the hazy moonlight outside the window and finally sighed. Since the establishment of Butian Pavilion, it was just a gimmick to prop up this structure. Tai Butian was a crown prince in name, but in reality he was a monarch. Where would he find the time to manage Butian Pavilion? Now that Chu Yang had arrived, it could be said that this gap had been filled. "Uncleing, what do you think Chu Yang will do to Butian Pavilion?" Tai Butian seemed to be talking to herself. The air in front of her suddenly became dense and fluctuated. It was as if the space in front of her had inexplicably distorted. An illusory shadow appeared just like that. It was like a ghost. With a dry and low voice it said, "You shouldn't be asking me about this matter. I am not asking you, but I want to see you." Tai Butian said softly, "You are my biggest support, but you are so unwilling to appear. After not seeing you for a few days, I kept wanting to talk to you. Only after confirming your existence will I be able to sleep at night." Haha. Ying's illusory eyes also seemed to fluctuate. He said hoarsely, Your Highness, don't worry. With the two of us here, no one in lower three heavens can kill you. Tai Bushan smiled and nodded. She muttered, so tired. She slowly took 2 steps back and fell on the bed. She murmured, Uncle Xing, you should also rest. The air was distorted again. Ing slowly floated and disappeared. Tai Bushan had already closed her eyes on the bed. With Ing here, she was very relieved. Even though she did not know what level Brother Ing was at, one thing was clear. If not for Brother Ing, perhaps Daiwer Qingro would have already taken her head. When Chang'ang returned from Tai Bushan's place, it was already the second half of the night. He walked to his room and was about to push the door open. Suddenly he was startled. He said in a low voice, Who is in my room? It's me. A clear voice said. Then the candlelight in the room lit up. So it's Minister. Chang'ang breathed a sigh of relief. He pushed the door open and entered. In the room, Chu Yang was sitting upright on a chair. His eyes were cold as he looked at Chang'ang. I don't know why Minister came in the middle of the night. What advice do you have? Chang'ang did not know why, but his heart was beating like a drum. Chang'ang clearly felt that the opponent's strength was weak, and that he could kill him with just a stretch of his hand, but he felt a sense of wariness towards this seemingly weak youth. To him, this was truly an unimaginable thing. I don't dare to give advice. Chu Yang smiled and said, It's just that in the afternoon, my words were not very appropriate. Regarding the change of position, I did not inform Captain Chung beforehand. My heart is very uneasy. Not at all. Minister Chu's methods are brilliant. In one move, you caught the traitor and removed the hidden danger for Butian Pavilion. Moreover, you used thunderous methods to turn Butian Pavilion into a fighting force in the shortest time possible. I am very impressed. Chang'ang said with a smile. Well, so you're saying that Captain Chung approves of what I've done? Chu Yang smiled. Of course. I approve. Chang'ang nodded repeatedly. He was still guessing Chu Yang's real purpose for coming here. His heart was a little nervous and a little guilty. His Highness did not say anything, right? Chu Yang said with a smile. He did not say anything. Chang'ang said half of his words before suddenly coming back to his senses. He looked at Chu Yang dumbfoundedly. His expression was as if he had seen a ghost. It's good that he did not say anything. Chu Yang stood up and nodded lightly. Actually, I was hoping that he would say something. Haha, Official Chung must be tired from running around. You are already so old. Don't work too hard. Haha, rest early. Just like that, he opened the door and left. Chung Eng's head was full of cold sweat. His whole body was cold. Chapter 94. Ever since the matter at Butian Pavilion was settled, he left through the secret passage and went to the imperial residence as fast as he could. Then, he told them everything in the shortest amount of time and came back as fast as he could. All of this took less than a quarter of an hour. But Chu Yang already knew everything and was waiting for him here. Even if it was Tai Butian who informed Chu Yang, it would not be so fast. Chang'ang suddenly knew that this young man's thoughts were as deep as the ocean. In front of him no one could hide. This time, even though he did not say anything, it was clear that he was here to give him a warning. Your whereabouts are all in my hands. Do not have any devious ideas or you will regret it. That was what he meant. Chang'ang let out a deep sigh as he watched the figure leave in a carefree manner. Walking in the night wind, Chu Yang felt very refreshed. He had always been paying attention to Chang'ang, because he was 100% sure that Chang'ang was Tai Butian's representative in Butian Pavilion. Chang'ang might be an expert, but he was definitely not a qualified leader. The reason why he became the pavilion master before Chu Yang came was first because his strength was the highest among the people present, and second because he was reliable. Otherwise, Tai Butian would not let an outsider become the pavilion master of Butian Pavilion. Moreover, Tai Butian, the initiator, did not hold any leadership position in Butian Pavilion. That was because Tai Butian trusted Chang'ang. Chu Yang did not believe that Tai Butian would let Butian Pavilion go like this. Therefore, when the matter was over and Chang'ang was nowhere to be seen, Chu Yang knew that this guy must have rushed to report to Tai Butian. After all, such a big change in power in Butian Pavilion must be immediately notified to Tai Butian. Therefore, Chu Yang went to Chang Eng's room in advance to wait. This kind of feeling was not good. Chu Yang wanted complete control. Having an informant by his side was not a good feeling. However, directly getting rid of him was obviously not possible. Therefore, Chu Yang had to suppress this feeling and influence to the minimum. You are Tai's person, fine. But with me, even if you are a dragon, you have to coil up. Even if you are a tiger, you have to lie down. If I don't agree, don't think about making any waves. Don't think that just because you are Tai's most trusted person. This place is Tai's territory. Chu Yang snorted twice. Then, he let out a strange and sinister laugh. His sinister voice spread out in the night wind. A crying baby by the roadside suddenly fell silent, walking all the way to Emerald Flow Lake. Even with Chu Yang's superior mental strength, he was still shocked by the situation in front of him. The wall-like perimeter wall had already begun to take shape. The originally quiet and elegant Emerald Flow Lake was now deep into the night, but it was still hot and humid. There were also many big and burly men carrying whips overseeing the work. On top of the pavilion on the island in the middle of the lake, Gu Duxing crossed his arms. His eyes were cold as he looked around. His gaze was as sharp as a sword as he stood motionless. He just stood there without moving. But the entire Emerald Flow Lake seemed to have entered a cold autumn. In the pavilion below there was a mess. Taking a closer look, it turned out that the bodies of dozens of people had been thrown there. They were not dead, but they were half dead. They were all moaning weakly, but no one dared to curse. One of the men moaned loudly. Gu Duxing on the pavilion frowned and coldly said, "Noisy." With a bang, half of a tile fell from the sky and hit the place where the man's leg was broken. Then the sound of cold air being sucked in could be heard. The extreme pain of wanting to cry out but not being able to make a sound rose up. Everyone at the side suddenly shuddered. Chu Yang was confused as he walked closer. Then he suddenly slapped his head. "It's all my fault. I didn't tell Gu Duxing clearly that he only needed to occupy the center of the island. In the end, this guy actually occupied the entire Emerald Flow Lake. But this is too big, isn't it? You came." Gu Duxing floated down from the pavilion like a cloud and stood in front of Chu Yang. Other than the time when he got drunk and his face melted, he immediately regained his zombie-like coldness after sobering up. What happened?" Chu Yang pointed at the surroundings. I occupied the entire Emerald Flow Lake," Gu Duxing casually said. "It looked like a lot of money. Plus, we were in pursuit of speed. So, I hired all the construction teams that I could." Chu Yang staggered. "Then what happened to these people?" He pointed at the group of people on the ground who had their limbs broken by Gu Duxing. "This is a small matter. It's not worth mentioning," Gu Duxing casually said. "I heard that this place used to belong to a few big officials. These people are their servants. Oh, most of them are housekeepers. Originally there were a lot of them, but they were all beaten back by me." Gu Duxing rolled his eyes and coldly said, "Just a few officials from a secular country. They actually dared to stop us from doing our job. Their guts are too big." Chu Yang rubbed his forehead and carefully asked, "Did you beat anyone to death?" He secretly prayed in his heart that this master didn't beat a lot of people to death. If that happened, it would be really hard to clean up. Even if Tai Butian had to clean up after him, he still needed to be reasonable, right? Forcefully occupying other people's place and beating their people to death. It seemed like the side in the right wasn't on his side. Looking around, there were a lot of injured people, but there didn't seem to be any corpses. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Gu Duxing's words put Chu Yang's heart at ease. He continued, "But I only killed a dozen or so people. It's not a big deal. Besides, it's bad luck to leave corpses here. I got people to take them away." Chu Yang trembled and his face darkened. Finally, he was speechless and raised his thumb. "You're ruthless. A great man has to be ruthless," Gu Duxing lightly said. "Whoever is ruthless enough will be able to live." Chu Yang was speechless. He waved his hand and said, "I'm going to sleep." "Wait. What?" "It's your turn to watch for a while. I've been watching for a day. I'm going to practice my sword for a while and then rest." Gu Duxing left without looking back. Before he left, he said, "There's no place to sleep here. The previous ones have all been torn down by me. You can meditate." Chu Yang ordered people to bring the injured to the shore. When he went to look for Gu Duxing again, he was already gone. Chu Yang stood quietly for a while. Shaking his head, he found a secluded place near the water and sat down cross-legged. He activated the Heaven Tribulation Divine Technique. For Chu Yang, sleeping every day was the best time to cultivate. He would not give up on this little bit of time. As his thoughts sank into his sea of consciousness, Chu Yang took a deep breath. Everything between heaven and earth seemed to return to silence. Slowly, his mind became undistracted. The lake of his heart became tranquil. In this noisy construction site, he captured a tranquility that was similar to the tranquility of heaven and earth. On the other side, Gu Duxing, who was practicing his sword, was startled. He jumped out and looked at Chu Yang from afar. His heart was in shock. How is this possible? Only a 4th-grade martial warrior. Although Gu Duxing was practicing his sword, he had always been paying attention to Chu Yang's movements. Since the day he said the word brother, Gu Duxing's heart suddenly felt like it had something to rely on. He felt like he still had a relative in this world. Chu Yang. The two of them did not talk about age, but Gu Duxing knew that Chu Yang was younger than him. But Chu Yang, who he had never met before, gave him hope. Chu Yang helped him when he was at the end of the road, and gave him the path to the peak. Since the day Chu Yang said, Gu Miaoling cannot be let down, so I will help you. In Gu Duxing's heart, Chu Yang was not only his benefactor, but also his brother. A brother who entrusted his life to him. Chapter 95. If it was before, Gu Duxing only had two concerns in his heart: his foster father and sister Xiao Miao. But now there was one more: Chu Yang. Although Chu Yang looked mature and steady, Gu Duxing knew that this kind of maturity and steadiness could only be tempered through too many things and too many hardships. Every time he thought of this, Gu Duxing felt his heart ache. Compared to Chu Yang, Gu Duxing felt that he was much luckier. When he was young, at least he experienced the love and care of his parents. After the tragedy of his family, his foster father also took care of him. It could be said that he did not suffer much. But Chu Yang? Gu Duxing felt that Chu Yang was like a little brother who had been urged to mature. He needed to protect and take care of him. There was no reason for this feeling. It was just natural. He always thought that Chu Yang's cultivation was higher than his, but he never thought that Chu Yang's cultivation was only a 4th-grade martial warrior. So tonight, when he saw Chu Yang practicing, he was shocked. Then he thought, nonsense, so what if he is a 4th-grade martial warrior? With me here, who can do anything to him? Even if he has no cultivation, would I, Gu Duxing, betray my brother? With this thought he felt relieved. But just as he raised his sword, he was shocked again. He could not help but turn his head again. This time he used so much force that he almost twisted his neck. Chu Yang over there, how did he enter a meditative state? Gu Duxing felt that he could not understand. A mere 4th-grade martial warrior entered a meditative state as soon as he sat down? This is simply monstrous. Even a martial great master would not be this fast, right? Gu Duxing opened his eyes wide. The construction site on the shore suddenly seemed to be far away, separated from this world. A gentle breeze came, and the lake water gently moved, slowly beating against the shore. Wave after wave, it was endless. Chu Yang seemed to have vaguely heard the sound of the lake. His spirit light flashed. His divine technique was still operating, but he separated a strand of his divine will to pay attention to the gentle sound of the waves crashing against the shore. Slowly in his consciousness, a tranquil small lake seemed to appear. The lake water was boundless. At this moment, Chu Yang's mind entered a deeper level of tranquility. It was as if he had suddenly been pulled away from this world, and was immersed in that small lake of consciousness. On the other side, Gu Duxing was sighing. This Chu Yang is really abnormal. With such aptitude, why should I worry that he won't be able to catch up with me in a short time? Entering a meditative state as soon as he sat down, I really have to hand it to him. However, just as he was thinking about this, he suddenly felt that Chu Yang's aura had become faintly discernible. He couldn't help but jerk his head back and rub his eyes in disbelief. This guy, as soon as he sat down, he entered a meditative state. In just a few breaths, he actually entered a state where he forgot about everything around him. Gu Duxing almost cried out in surprise. One must know that this state of forgetfulness was a state that could only be forcefully entered after meditating for at least 2 hours. This was the highest level of cultivation. Only by reaching this level would one be able to harmonize their heart and harmonize their mind and spirit. This level of cultivation was twice as fast as the meditation level. Chu Yang entered so easily. What a freak. The corners of Gu Duxing's mouth revealed a hint of a bitter smile. Originally, he thought that with his aptitude, he was a genius that was hard to come by in 3 days. Who would have thought that this guy who was younger than him would mercilessly crush his greatest self-confidence? Inside his consciousness, Chu Yang slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the endless waves without any fatigue, he seemed to have understood something. These waves didn't have much strength, but they kept surging up, retreating, surging up again, and retreating again. There wasn't the slightest bit of irritation. Chu Yang couldn't help but think, if a person's cultivation was like these waves, without joy from external gains, without sorrow from personal losses, without impatience, I wonder how fast I would improve. As he watched, he slowly felt that the internal energy in his body seemed to have become waves after waves of endless waves, circulating along his meridians. Round after round it circulated peacefully and steadily. At this moment, Chu Yang's mental state suddenly advanced to a higher level. He felt that in this whole world, there was suddenly no man, no self, no object, no desire, nothing existed. His body seemed to have become this gentle lake water, gently surging up and then gently retreating. In this process, he was enjoying himself, sweet and tranquil. It seemed that even until the end of time, he would never lose his patience. In the distance, Gu Duxing looked over with his mouth agape like a hippopotamus. The sword in his hand silently fell to the ground. Gu Duxing collapsed. God save me, tell me this isn't real. How is this possible? Gu Duxing pulled his hair until he felt intense pain. Only then did he come back to his senses. Heavens, the legendary oneness of heaven and man, deep comprehension, appeared in front of me just like that. Just now, when he noticed the abnormal situation, he didn't turn back. He even prayed silently in his heart to let Chu Yang stay in that state for a while longer. It would be best if he could continue like this. This would be very beneficial for his cultivation. But he didn't expect that something even stranger would happen next. His eyes clearly saw Chu Yang sitting there, but he couldn't sense Chu Yang's existence anymore. There was only one explanation for this situation. Oneness of heaven and man, deep comprehension. This had already surpassed the level of cultivation. It was completely a legendary realm. This kind of realm could only appear in the martial king realm. And it didn't appear often. It was a realm that could only be entered occasionally in deep comprehension. Legend had it that every time one entered this realm, they would definitely gain something. But how rare was this kind of situation? One had to maintain absolute silence and absolutely couldn't be disturbed. After several hours of meditation, one would be in a state of forgetfulness, searching bitterly. And one couldn't be impatient. Once one was impatient, one wouldn't be able to enter. Everything had to go with the flow. Once one was disturbed, all the previous efforts would be wasted, and one's realm would drop. But Chu Yang, he was surrounded by such a noisy construction site, and beside the splashing lake water, yet he entered the deep comprehension of oneness of heaven and man just like that? Was there still justice in this world? Gu Duxing sat on the ground. His butt sat on a sharp stone, but he didn't feel it. Chu Yang was in a state of deep comprehension, but he was experiencing it to his heart's content. At this moment, the space at the sword tip of Calamity Sword silently opened, as if it was swallowing something. In the lake, a dense fog that couldn't be seen with the naked eye slowly condensed. It rose up and circled in the air, as if it was being pulled by something invisible. It slowly approached Chu Yang's body, and then quickly penetrated into it, disappearing without a trace. Slowly, the surface of the lake was covered by another layer of dense fog, and another layer. After an unknown amount of time, 2 hours, for hours, Gu Duxing, who had been sitting there in a daze, was already covered in dew. Even his temples were full of frost, but he still didn't feel it. This was because he was looking at the fluctuation of energy around Chu Yang's body. Chu Yang's realm was rising little by little. And it was only during this short period of time that Gu Duxing could feel Chu Yang's existence. Fourth grade martial warrior. Upper 4th grade martial warrior peak breakthrough. 5th grade martial warrior. Chapter 96. Gu Duxing searched for all the words in his mind and found that there was no word that could describe someone like Chu Yang. This was already beyond the category of human. The higher the rank of a martial artist, the harder it is. Every rank is divided into different grades. Every grade is divided into different grades. Since ancient times, who didn't take one step at a time, slowly accumulating and then breaking through? Martial artist. Of course, it is very low. It is not strange to use elixirs to increase a few ranks at once. However, they didn't take any elixirs. They just cultivated and advanced like this. Since ancient times, the person who advanced the fastest was Lu Yongxiang of the upper 3 heavens. He was a living legend. When he was young, he broke through to the martial artist level and set a record for advancing 1 rank in 3 days. Since ancient times, no one has been able to break it. But today, Gu Duxing saw with his own eyes a freak who broke through 1 rank in just 2 hours. He witnessed a miracle with his own eyes. Gu Duxing groaned in his throat, feeling extremely inferior for a moment. Oh my god, it's not over yet. Gu Duxing's eyes widened again because he felt a slight fluctuation in Chu Yang's energy. 5th grade martial artist. Even a bolt from the blue could not describe Gu Duxing's feelings at this moment. He was already numb. 5th grade martial artist is high peak of 5th grade martial artist rank. Oh my god, it finally stopped. If it doesn't stop, I will vomit blood. It stopped at the peak of 5th grade. Gu Duxing banged his head on the ground and silently prayed. Being with this freak is too much of a blow to my self-esteem. I am also a genius, but compared to him, I will just take a knife and slit my own throat. In less than 2 hours he advanced 2 ranks. Gu Duxing felt as if he had just had a dream. An unbelievable, absurd and unimaginable dream. Chu Yang finally woke up from that wonderful state. Almost at the same time as he woke up, Calamity Sword's voice sounded in Chu Yang's mind. You finally comprehended the power of heaven and earth. This voice was full of gratification. Power of heaven and earth? Chu Yang was puzzled. This is the power of heaven and earth? This is still far from the real power of heaven and earth. This is a very insignificant one. Because you were by the lake, what you comprehended was naturally the gentle power of the lake water. This can also be considered a coincidence. In your previous life, you were so poor that you were blinded by hatred and obsession that you couldn't comprehend anything. I didn't expect that I would be able to comprehend one so early in this life. Oh, water is divided into tangible and intangible forces. The tangible forces include the roaring force of the raging sea, the destructive force of the mountain torrents, the nourishing force of the heaven's will, and the violent force of the heaven's will. What you have comprehended is the gentle force of the tangible forces. What's the use of this power? Using gentleness to conquer strength, the voice said. How you use it is up to you. Heavenly tribulation, powerless can't be used. Oh, so to say mountains, rivers, seas, lakes, forests, earth, wind, thunder, rain, snow, clouds, and stars are all different kinds of forces? Chu Yang pondered and asked. I can't say. If you can comprehend it, it's your good fortune. If you can't comprehend it, you won't be able to comprehend it no matter what I tell you. This is an opportunity, and also your ability to comprehend. The voice became ethereal and slowly disappeared. Then your existence, isn't it to guide me to obtain this opportunity? Chu Yang asked. The voice didn't answer, as if it had already fallen asleep. But Chu Yang already understood that the tribulation sword wasn't omnipotent. If he wanted to reach the peak, he still had to rely on himself. Whether it was the tribulation sword or the heavenly tribulation technique, although they had souls, they weren't him. Only when his efforts were there would the tribulation sword give him appropriate hints. If he didn't work hard enough, then even if he grasped the world's #1 miracle, he would still be a loser. He would still be a loser. Chu Yang pondered. However, this little reminder was enough. Because this reminder had opened up a vast and boundless sky for Chu Yang in the martial way. Originally, when Chu Yang cultivated, he could only see one path. But now he could see the heavens and earth, the universe's firmament. Sighing comfortably, Chu Yang stood up, only to feel the joints all over his body crackling. Looking at the sky, Chu Yang was a little surprised. He had only sat for less than 4 hours. Why did he have this kind of feeling? He wouldn't feel tired, but the crackling of his joints was something that would only happen when he sat for an entire night. But usually, when he sat for an entire night to feel this kind of movement, he would feel a little tired. But today, he felt incomparably relaxed, as if he had unlocked some kind of shackle. His whole body felt light as if he was about to fly, as if he didn't cultivate for an entire night, but instead fell into a deep sleep. He tried to raise his energy, and the energy in his dantian suddenly came up, instantly circulating one round in his meridians. Chu Yang suddenly felt that something was wrong, and hurriedly circulated one more round. Unknowingly, his mouth opened wide. The 2 acupuncture points that his energy couldn't reach normally were actually unobstructed this time. He actually broke through unknowingly? Chu Yang couldn't help but feel excited. Could it be that he had only cultivated for 4 hours and actually advanced by 2 stages? This is too amazing, isn't it? Just as he was secretly feeling happy, a face suddenly appeared in front of him. Opening his eyes, he saw Gu Duxing's haggard face. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared fiercely at Chu Yang. His expression was ferocious, completely different from the usual cold zombie face. What's wrong? Chu Yang was very surprised. What happened? Gu Duxing gritted his teeth and growled in a low voice. What did happen? Chu Yang scratched his head, unable to make sense of it. Puzzled, he asked, what happened? Gu Duxing went crazy. He jumped up and roared, how did you do it? What do you mean, how did I do it? Chu Yang was confused. Hello. Gu Duxing stood up, madly circled around in place and lowered his head again. The tip of his nose almost touched Chu Yang's. Are you going to tell me? How did you do it? In 4 hours, he had risen 2 ranks. Gu Duxing almost cried out. This guy is actually still playing dumb. Oh, you're talking about this. Chu Yang scratched his head innocently. To be honest, even I don't know. When I woke up this morning, I found out that I had advanced by 2 stages, and I was secretly delighted. You don't know. Secretly delighted? Gu Duxing only felt stars in front of his eyes. He was completely confused by the lakeside. He groaned twice, rolled his eyes a few times, stomped his feet, and took 2 deep breaths, trying hard to suppress his surging blood. Only then did he realize that this kind of thing the person involved really didn't know. Especially Chu Yang, who was still a martial warrior rookie, it was even more impossible for him to know. This was a great opportunity. And all of this had happened unknowingly. If Chu Yang had felt it and knew clearly, then this kind of thing wouldn't have happened. I really don't know. Chu Yang said innocently. I just cultivated and advanced. Chapter 97. Don't say anything. Gu Duxing waved his hand in despair. Looking at Chu Yang's perplexed face, he almost wanted to punch it. Too depressing. Such a muddle-headed person actually leveled up for no reason. He doesn't even know how rare such a situation is. I've been pursuing this realm for so many years, but I haven't entered it even once. Thinking of this, Gu Duxing suddenly had an urge to cry. I'm the one who needs to level up the most. Chu Yang had no choice. How could he not want Gu Duxing to level up as soon as possible? After all, he was weak now. Leveling up by 1 or 2 levels was not of much use. But Gu Duxing was now a 5th grade sword great master. Even if he leveled up by 1 grade, it would also increase his combat power by a huge margin. But things like comprehension depended on one's comprehension and luck. If Gu Duxing didn't have the luck and told him what he had comprehended, it would delay him instead. It would cause him to never enter the realm that he had just told him about. What was yours was yours. What others comprehended, no matter what, it was still their thoughts. How could it be the same? If Gu Duxing comprehended, then Chu Yang would give him a hint, just like what the sword spirit did to Chu Yang. That would be the best result. But if Gu Duxing didn't comprehend, then it would be useless no matter what he said. Chu Yang understood this, and so did Gu Duxing. So the 2 of them became depressed. Then, how did you enter that realm? Gu Duxing asked with a glimmer of hope. But just as he said it, he shook his head. Forget it, I guess you don't know this either. That kind of mysterious realm, if you knew, you wouldn't be able to enter. Brilliant. You know so much. Chu Yang gave him a thumbs up and praised him. But this praise made Gu Duxing's face turn red and white. He was even more depressed. I don't know how I entered and I don't know why I leveled up. I can't tell you what I comprehended, but I only know one thing. Chu Yang looked at Gu Duxing and said slowly, that is, you're too anxious. You must know that more haste, less speed. The more anxious you are, the more you won't get anything. You won't be able to enter any realm. Blindly training will only cripple you. Gu Duxing was stunned. Suddenly, he straightened his body and a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. Chu Yang's words woke Gu Duxing up, as if he had been enlightened. He remained silent for a while. His breathing became calm before he slowly said, yes, I was too impatient. This is my inner demon. After all, your comprehension and advancement are your own business, your own destiny. As for me, I have my own insights and opportunities. Why force it? I just need my own. Chu Yang smiled and said deeply, everything depends on oneself in the end. This sentence was the deepest realization he had just had. He couldn't tell Gu Duxing what he had learned about martial arts. It would only harm him. But it didn't matter if he had some insights about life. Rely on yourself. Gu Duxing's right hand gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. His whole body was like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed, emitting a sharp aura. His eyes gradually lit up. Relying on oneself did not mean that one should reject the help of friends and be alone for the rest of one's life. Rather, he had to rely on himself and his state of mind had to depend on himself. Gu Duxing naturally understood this point. Chu Yang, brother, you've helped me again. Gu Duxing looked at the sky that was about to brighten in the east and said softly, you said that if there was a mountain of knives in front of me and I stepped on you, you would have no complaints. Chu Yang smiled and said, then what's wrong with me helping you once in advance before crossing the mountain of knives? Gu Duxing smiled. His smile was filled with rare warmth. He repeated softly and softly, yes, if there was a mountain of knives in front of you, I would let you step on me to cross it. He said this very softly. Almost no sound came out. Chu Yang only saw his lips moving and didn't hear it. But Gu Duxing knew that this was tantamount to making an oath. He also knew that although Chu Yang was joking just now, Gu Duxing believed that if there was a mountain of knives in front of him one day, Chu Yang would probably make the same choice as him. Some words didn't need to be said. Keeping it in one's heart was better than anything else. So Gu Duxing didn't say it out loud. It was equivalent to saying it from his own mouth into his own heart. After tomorrow, the walls here should be built. I'll also let them build the rooms here. I want to go out once. Gu Duxing looked at the gently rippling lake water and said, we'll just sit here. The experts won't come looking for us. I'll go and choose a few people and also kill a few people. Good. Then leave this place to me. Gu Duxing said slowly, I'm also taking advantage of an opportunity to leave home this time. A vision of heaven and earth appeared and the heavens changed. The entire lower three heavens and upper three heavens have people coming down to train. And they are all outstanding people from their own clans or clans. Before he finished, Chu Yang understood what he meant. You mean you want to pull these people in? But his heart was moved. Vision of heaven and earth? Gathering in the lower three heavens? Clan training? What does this mean? In my previous life such things didn't happen. With these guys in the lower three heavens, what will happen? What will fate be like? What will the situation of the continent be like? Will there be any impact? Gu Duxing thought for a while and still shook his head. He said, I'm not sure. After thinking again, he still shook his head and sighed. He said, I'm not sure either. Chu Yang smiled. He understood what Gu Duxing meant by, I'm not sure. First, I'm not sure if I can pull them in. Those people are all geniuses. How can they be willing to submit to others? Second, even if I pull one in, if they don't want to be controlled and even want to take over, I'm not sure if I can stop or kill them. After all, how can these little ancestors not bring along powerful bodyguards when they come out? With the strength of Chu Yang and Gu Duxing, they are still too weak. Your foster father's two sons. Who came down this time? Chu Yang asked. Both of them came down. Gu Duxing smiled lightly. Only the two of them are competing. How can they not decide who's better? Gu Duxing's smile had a hint of mockery. How about getting rid of them? Chu Yang seriously suggested. They used to bully you and can't tolerate you. Have you ever thought about this? Gu Duxing's body shook. He looked at Chu Yang with a complicated gaze. He said softly, "If I could kill them, I would have done so long ago." He turned around and said quietly, "No matter how wrong they are still foster father's sons. Foster father only has these 2 sons. Plus, they are Sister Xiaomiao's brother. If they die, I'm afraid foster father and Sister Xiaomiao will collapse. And the entire Gu clan will have no successor. Actually, I want to kill them more than you do. But I will never kill them. Because of the Gu clan. Because of foster father's kindness to me. Because of Sister Xiaomiao." Gu Duxing said softly, "If they are in danger, I will still protect them." He smiled bitterly. "Very contradictory, right? Gu Duxing." Chu Yang said sincerely, "You are a real man. No, you should be a man. If you kill, you are a man. If you don't kill, you are a man. If you kill, you are a man. If you don't kill, you are a man." Gu Duxing murmured. After a while he smiled. He shook his head and didn't say anything. He stood there quietly for a while. Looking at the eastern sky, he took a deep breath and said, "It's daybreak. I'm leaving. I will be back in a month at the latest." After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Chu Yang to reply. He shook his arms and soared into the sky like a big bird. He didn't use the pontoon bridge. Instead, he stepped on the water surface twice and reached the opposite shore. He waved his hand from afar. His body shook twice and disappeared. Chapter 98. Chu Yang quietly stood by the lakeside, slowly familiarizing himself with the increased strength in his body. As if he was waiting for something in the morning, this huge construction site became a sea of noise. After Tai Butian reprimanded the 2 officials last night, the big officials no longer dared to come and ask for the land and property back. However, this did not stop them from asking for an explanation. After all, his family's servants and warriors were either dead or injured, and several of the team leaders' butlers were all detained. This caused an uproar among the nobles of Ironcloud Citadel. Some came to ask for an explanation, some came to watch the fun, and some came from the capital's government to mediate the situation. It was very lively. However, this chaos only lasted for less than 15 minutes before rumbling sounds came from all directions. Groups of cavalry rushed out from all directions. The cavalry at the front yelled, "His Majesty has decreed that the military is recruiting Emerald Flow Lake for military service. If anyone dares to stop him, he will be treated as a traitor. His entire family will be executed, and his entire clan will be implicated." Several groups of cavalry galloped back and forth a few times. This imperial decree was shouted a dozen times. Then they jumped off their horses and placed 2 soldiers in each direction. The rest of the cavalry roared and left in a cloud of dust. From beginning to end, they did not even look at the people who wanted to cause trouble on the lakeside. However, the power of this imperial decree was obvious. The people from the big clans looked at each other and ran away with their tails between their legs. Chu Yang stayed in the pavilion with his eyes closed. He did not make any noise. Only when the cavalry left did he slightly open his eyes. His eyes flashed with a satisfied smile. Tai Butian's actions were quite satisfactory. It also showed that she valued Chu Yang very much. "Then, I'll help you with your internal affairs." Chu Yang smiled and stood up. When Chu Yang arrived at Butian Pavilion, it was already noon. Chang'ang and the others were busy working. According to the clues they found yesterday, they investigated all kinds of information and worked very hard. From morning until now, 3 groups of people had already been sent out to carry out missions. When the people in the pavilion saw Chu Yang arrive, they were all in awe. Tell the 3 groups that have already been sent out that along the way, no matter what happens, they must record it in detail. The entire process must be recorded without missing a single detail. Chu Yang said, in addition, the people that the Butian Martial Arts Museum is recruiting must be confirmed as soon as possible. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. The experts recruited by the Jixian Martial Arts Hall must sign their names if they pass the examination. Got it. Chang'ang and Chan Yutong's hearts shivered. Minister, are you saying that there is also a spy in Jixian Martial Hall? I didn't say that. But it's better to be careful. If something happens, we can follow the vine to the melon. and find some clues that we didn't notice before. Chu Yang smiled and said, in addition, the cultivation hall needs to be equipped with some auxiliary equipment. Everyone who is not on a mission at home can go and cultivate. Chang'ang and Chun Yutong both rolled their eyes. Wasn't this the same as managing Butian Pavilion like an army? Would that work? In addition, the Crown Prince has decreed that anyone who comes to Jixin Tavern to apply for a job with a cultivation level above that of a martial warrior will be given 100 taels of silver if they are accepted. Those who perform meritorious deeds will be rewarded with gold and silver. They will also be given official positions and titles according to their merits. The highest rank can be an important official in the imperial court, a governor of the border, or even a duke. An important official of the imperial court? A governor of the border? A duke? Chang'ang and Chun Yutong's eyes immediately widened. Minister, this. Isn't this too? Chu Yang said casually. If there is no reward and no future, who would risk their lives? Do you really think that those who come to Butian Pavilion are all people with aspirations for the country and the people? Aspiring people also need to eat. They also need to have a wife and wealth. He looked at the two with a smile and said, even you are the same. Chang'ang and Chun Yutong looked at each other and saw the light in each other's eyes. Did the Crown Prince really say that? Chang'ang still did not believe it. He felt that he was a revered martial artist. Even though he was not considered a master in lower three heavens, he could still dominate a region. If he wanted to make a name for himself, it would not be difficult. If Tai Butian really did make such a promise, then he would have to work harder and work harder. I can testify to this, Chu Yang said seriously. Chang'ang and Chun Yutong's eyes showed uncontrollable joy. Order people to bring all the information of Iron Cloud's officials to me. I will start with Iron Cloud Citadel. I want officials of 5th rank and above. If the level is too low, it will be boring. Chu Yang left these words and turned to leave. There was one thing he did not say. If the level is too low, Diwu Ro would not need to waste his effort. As for the reward Chu Yang mentioned, 100 silver taels was naturally not much. The important thing was, the feudal officials, nobles and dukes. This was the most attractive. This was especially true for the grassy Jianghu. In this era where talents were sought after, it was common for bandits to run rampant. It was even more unthinkable. Chu Yang could foresee that once this notice was posted, it would cause a sensation. The news that Chu Yang wanted to transfer the information of officials was immediately reported to Tai Butian. Tai Butian immediately rushed over as if his butt was on fire. Mr. Chu, you want to reorganize the court officials? Tai Butian had not yet sat down and asked hurriedly. Oh, is that not possible? Chu Yang asked. Tai Butian smiled bitterly. He always felt that the relationship between himself and Chu Yang was a little strange. He had always been cultivating Emperor Divine technique. These years, no matter how busy he was, he never stopped. His temperament could be said to already have the aura of a ruler, and it was very strong. It made people fear him. But every time he was with Chu Yang's attitude was as if he only treated him as an ordinary person. Tai Butian really could not understand where the strong mentality of Chu Yang's came from. After all, Chu Yang's information showed that he was only a teenager who was not even 17 years old. Iron Cloud has already reorganized the court 3 times. It's too fast to do it now. Tai Butian said somewhat bitterly. Ever since Iron Cloud's power weakened, many scholars even gave up on being officials in Iron Cloud. Especially at the borders, too many people moved their families to Great Zhao and took the imperial examinations there to become officials. In Tai Butian's heart, it was necessary to reorganize the court. But he did not expect Chu Yang to act so quickly. Even if people like that stay in Iron Cloud, do you think they will be of any use? Chu Yang smiled mockingly and said, just like a phoenix, it can only be reborn after bathing in fire. A country can only be truly strong when it stands up from a place of suffering. If it continues to be smooth sailing, it will only lead to destruction. How can I not know this? Tai Butian said tiredly. But now we don't have so many talents. It's better to have nothing than to have something substandard, Chu Yang said coldly. Tai Butian lowered his head and thought for a while. Then he raised his head and said, then I will give you a list of a few 100 years old aristocratic families. If you deal with people from these aristocratic families, give them a way out. Tai Butian laughed self-deprecatingly. These aristocratic families are deeply rooted in Iron Cloud. If there is a real turmoil, I'm afraid the foundation of Iron Cloud will be shaken. Back then, second uncle also tried his best to avoid these two purges. You have to be careful too. Chu Yang's eyes flashed twice. He said, okay, but if I really can't avoid it, I will use a gentler method. Tai Butian pretended not to understand and said, that's for the best. Whether it's governing a country or doing other things, it's always better to be gentler. Chapter 99. Tai Butian was silent for a while. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows and said, Emerald Flow Lake. How is it? Very good. Chu Yang revealed a smile. Then, he said meaningfully, what does your Royal Highness think about the matter of rewarding and recruiting people? Tai Butian smiled mischievously. It's good. Chu Yang smiled as well. Both of them smiled meaningfully. I have already told Chang'an that you are in charge of Butian Pavilion. Tai Butian looked at Chu Yang seriously. Brother Chu, I need to know the news here. I can't be deaf. Chu Yang was slightly touched. Tai Butian had already spoken to this point. He was very clear and sincere. I understand. That's why I only warned and didn't remove it. Chu Yang said. But there is one thing I don't understand. Why do you trust me so much? Tai Butian looked at him for a while. Then he smiled slowly and said, Intuition. I feel that you are worthy of my trust. It's that simple. Chu Yang suddenly realized that Tai Butian's smile was very charming. His smile started from his eyes and slowly curved up. Then, the tip of his nose moved slightly and the corners of his mouth opened slightly. Finally, a smile bloomed on both his cheeks. But when his eyes just started to curve, it made people feel very happy. Tai Butian smiling like this not only did not have the temperament of a natural ruler, but he was also very amiable and cute. Chu Yang was startled by his own thoughts. He reminded himself twice in his heart. Chu Yang, this is a man. This is a man. Tai Butian saw that Chu Yang was looking at him in a daze. He suddenly pulled his face and said, I'm leaving. He stood up and hurriedly walked away with a majestic gait. He didn't wait for Chu Yang to send him off, and quickly disappeared without a trace. As if he was escaping. Chu Yang's mouth twitched. He said to himself, when you came, you didn't walk with such vigor. When you left, you actually walked with the steps of a ruler. If you didn't walk like that, wouldn't it be too much? You are really pretentious to the extreme. Tai Butian walked out of Butian Pavilion. After walking for a long time, he remembered, oh no, I forgot to tell you about the situation at the border. He wanted to turn back. But after thinking about it, he gave up. She thought to herself, this guy always looks into other people's eyes when he's talking. He always makes me nervous. Tai Butian was the most respected person in Iron Cloud Nation. In the past few years, his authority had increased day by day. Besides Tai Longcheng, it could be said that no one dared to look into his eyes and speak. However, Chu Yang was an exception. Chu Yang had a habit of speaking. He liked to look into other people's eyes when he spoke. Tai Butian didn't know that this was caused by Chu Yang's dark spirit poison. Because Chu Yang was prepared to use the dark spirit poison at any time to test the other party's words. This was indeed a habit. Not to mention men, even if it was a woman, Chu Yang would still look into her eyes and speak. That was because when a person was lying or thinking, there would be a strange look in their eyes. After all, there were very few people who could truly cultivate to the point of being able to lie without panicking or blinking their eyes. In the next few days, Chu Yang was busy on both sides. Then Tai Butian sent someone to deliver Wu Qianqian to Chu Yang in the afternoon. She said that she would be Minister Chu's assistant. Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this decision. Naturally, Wu Qianqian's unparalleled beauty also made the eyes of the rough men in Butian Pavilion green. They were secretly envious of this minister's luck with women. At the same time, they were speechless at the extent of Minister Chu's favor. Such a beautiful woman was actually willing to send over. It was clear that the trust and reliance on Minister Chu had reached a certain level. And Butian Pavilion's actions also began in these few days. They were really swift and decisive. After the new minister cleaned up Butian Pavilion, he immediately began to act. He didn't show his face much. Only the female official, Wu Qianqian, who had just been transferred over from the imperial palace, would pass out notes. Every note was a talisman that could hasten the death of an official. First, they would be caught and interrogated by Minister Chu. Then, a large pile of evidence would be brought out. Then it would be handed over to Tai Butian. Then, an imperial edict would be issued, and the entire family would be executed. More often than not, several families would be implicated. Minister Chu personally designed the uniforms of the 3 brigades. However, when carrying out the mission, they were all dressed in black. The Fierce Blood Brigade, under the leadership of Captain Chang'ang, worked day and night to confiscate homes, capture people and kill people. The Iron Blood Brigade, under the leadership of Minister Chu, worked day and night to interrogate people and capture evidence. The Tianji team, under the leadership of Chen Yutong, worked day and night to analyze the information. From every possible clue, they would report it to Minister Chu to make a decision. After half a month, the capital was filled with the smell of blood. Butian Pavilion's existence had basically replaced the Ministry of Justice. Only the prison that belonged to the Ministry of Justice was completely taken over by Butian Pavilion. Butian Pavilion's efficiency was unprecedentedly high. Everyone didn't even have the energy to complain. All day long they rushed back and forth. Even if they had some free time, they were forced to train. This was because Minister Chu had said, Butian Pavilion needs experts and talents. If you don't meet the requirements, just kill yourself. To avoid being killed by others, quit. That was absolutely impossible. As long as you joined, unless you died or were disabled during the mission, you could not quit. Even if you were disabled, you would still be given the task of analyzing information. Under such harsh conditions, everyone was grumbling endlessly as they trained. It was as if there was a steel knife hanging over their heads at any time. However, Minister Chu was incorruptible and impartial. A certain brother who was not diligent in his martial arts training was found out by Minister Chu. Then, Minister Chu directly pinned him down on the spot and gave him 200 lashes. 4 of his limbs were broken, and his flesh was dripping with blood. While being beaten, Minister Chu sat in his office and listened. He sent out a note, beat them to death. If they die, then they deserve it. If they don't die, then continue training. Under such life-threatening pressure, everyone kept quiet out of fear. This kind of pressure made it hard for everyone to breathe. However, after a few days, a level 3 martial master suddenly announced in joy, I broke through level 4. Under such pressure, I actually broke through a level. Who didn't know the difficulty of breaking through during training? Now that there was such a surprise, everyone naturally wanted to go and take a look. With one look, everyone's eyes turned blue with envy. Under such pressure, I actually broke through. After a few days, a few people were pleasantly surprised to find that their bottlenecks, which had been stagnant for years, suddenly showed signs of loosening. It seemed like they were about to break through as well. Under the urging of these few examples, everyone did not even need to urge them to train harder. They couldn't be left behind. How shameful would that be? Moreover, if their skills were high, they would be more confident in their achievements. Their wives would be bestowed with the title of prince, marquis, general, or minister. Therefore, everyone seemed to have realized Minister Chu's painstaking efforts. And the atmosphere suddenly became lively from its previous depressing state. Minister Chu was doing this for our own good. Chapter 100. The guy who had been beaten 200 times by the military rod had been practicing very hard. His hatred towards Minister Chu had disappeared without a trace, and had turned into gratitude instead. Although Minister Chu's heart was a bit black and his methods were a bit cruel, he was still guiding us onto a path of light. During this period of time, the efficiency of the 3 brigades had also greatly increased. Minister Chu had handed out a small piece of paper from his room to more than a dozen 5th rank and above officials. They had all been proven to be spies of the Great Zhao Empire. After this news was confirmed, Tai Butian was shocked. To avoid wrongful killings, he personally interrogated them and made sure that they confessed. Witnesses and material evidence were irrefutable. He was furious. The butcher's knife was raised again. For a moment, all the nobles in Ironcloud Citadel were in danger. On the official wall of Ironcloud Citadel, there was new content every day. Every new content indicated the fall of a high-ranking official and the execution of his entire family. Plus, these cases were all handled by Minister Chu. Every case had irrefutable evidence. Irrefutable evidence. No one could question it. For a moment, the name of Butian Pavilion was like the sun in iron-cloud citadel. The common people were all cheering, and the officials were all in danger. Although they were investigating spies and traitors, who knew when the legendary minister would raise his butcher's knife against corruption and bribery? This was something that could not be predicted. As officials, which one of our buttocks is clean? Which one of us is not full of shit that cannot be wiped off? True honesty and integrity. Motherfucker, how could there be such a good official? Therefore, everyone became well-behaved. They wanted to perform well in front of the minister. If the minister were to make a move against them, they would be able to say, "I've already turned over a new leaf. I've already turned over a new leaf. The minister is wise." There was one more thing that everyone didn't know. All the valuable materials that were seized after the raid, such as elixirs and rare metals, had mysteriously disappeared after the Fierce Blood Hall's operation. No one knew where these things had gone to. The 3 brigades of Butian Pavilion, Fierce Blood Hall, and Heavenly Secret Hall were also renamed Iron Blood Hall, Fierce Blood Hall, and Heavenly Secret Hall. Because of the temptation of gold, silver, treasures, and high positions, Butian Pavilion's manpower was growing day by day. It was slowly growing like a rolling snowball. Only half a month had passed, but Butian Pavilion's guards had increased from the original 80 to 130. It had increased by almost half. Moreover, Minister Chu was becoming more and more mysterious. Minister Chu would occasionally come out for a stroll when there were only his old subordinates around. But only Wu Qianqian would come out to pass notes after a few days. The original seniors had been ordered to keep their mouths shut. No one was allowed to divulge any information about Minister Chu, and the newcomers hadn't even seen Minister Chu's appearance. He only heard bits and pieces from other people's mouths. Minister Chu was young and promising. On the surface, he looked very weak and did not seem to know any martial arts. However, his intelligence was higher than the heavens, and his plans were flawless. In the entire Butian Pavilion, there was no one who did not respect him. However, this rumor had added a layer of mystery to the mysterious Minister Chu out of thin air. However, the great clans and officials of Ironcloud Citadel slowly began to call Minister Chu King of Hell Chu. This King of Hell Chu only gave orders, and then his subordinates would go and take souls. As long as King of Hell Chu gave a soul-taking order, they would not be able to escape for even a moment. In a short period of time, there was a saying in Ironcloud Citadel: "If the King of Hell wants you to die at midnight, who dares to keep you alive until 5? This saying was very noisy, and it was referring to Minister Chu. As this rumor spread, everyone who heard it nodded their heads. Everyone felt that this saying was right in their hearts. King of Hell Chu was indeed the King of Hell. Even if the real King of Hell gave a soul-taking order, if there was a doctor and medicine nearby, they could still stay for a day or two. However, if King of Hell Chu gave the order, then they would not be able to last even a quarter of an hour. King of Hell Chu was much more powerful than the King of Hell. This rumor spread quickly. The people of Butian Pavilion almost immediately heard this name. Everyone thought, damn, who came up with such an appropriate name? Minister Chu stayed in his room every day, and from time to time, he would send out a soul-taking order. The names written on it were basically dead. The King of Hell's soul-taking order would only capture one person, but Minister Chu's soul-taking order would behead the entire family. Moreover, there was also the implication that door. Even when people looked at it in broad daylight, they still felt that it was very eerie. Someone once said this about Minister Chu's door: "One step out and you are in the human world. One step out and you are in the underworld." Everyone agreed that this saying was too good. Minister Chu's office was definitely the palace of the mysterious King of Hell. Therefore, inside Butian Pavilion, when people talked about Minister Chu in private, they would all call him King of Hell. Everyone believed that Minister Chu would never bring disgrace to this title. Instead, he would bring it to greater heights. "Hey, did you see King of Hell today?" "No, King of Hell rarely comes out." Then, King of Hell's soul-taking order. He came out early in the morning. Soul-taking Rakshasa took it and gave it to Black Impermanence. Let me explain. Black Impermanence was the former pavilion lord of Butian Pavilion, the captain of the Fierce Blood Brigade, and the current leader of Fierce Blood Hall, Sir Chang'ong. Even the peerless beauty Wu Qianqian became known as the soul capturer Rakshasa, because she passed King of Hell Chu's notes back and forth. Wu Qianqian had always been like that. Her temperament had never changed. However, when the rumors about King of Hell Chu became more and more sensational, the soul capturer Rakshasa would tremble with fear wherever she went. Damn, it seems like King of Hell has not killed enough? King of Hell has killed enough? Are you kidding? Hey, what does King of Hell look like? King Yinlu of Hell. Do you want me to die? Seal order. Just a simple introduction. In short, if an ordinary person sees King of Hell, dying on the spot is considered a light punishment. The one who spoke had never seen King of Hell Chu's real face, but he was still boasting. Dying on the spot is considered a light punishment? If it is a heavy punishment, what will happen? A heavy punishment. Dying on the spot and not being able to reincarnate is a common occurrence. Fuck. So ugly? Of course, King of Hell. Therefore, under these false rumors, King of Hell's name became more and more infamous. In less than a month, King of Hell Chu's name shook Ironcloud Citadel. Naturally, King of Hell Chu couldn't sit idly by in the face of these rumors. So, he immediately took measures as soon as these rumors came out. He sent people out to fan the flames. He had to make sure that these rumors have a bigger impact. He had to make the rumors more widespread. The more people know about these rumors, the more people know about them. The more ominous the name, the better. Then King of Hell Chu made himself a ferocious and terrifying mask and began to show his face in public at Butian Pavilion for a few days. With a green face and sharp fangs, he gave off a ghostly aura. Seeing him in broad daylight was enough to scare people into peeing their pants. Chapter 101. King of Hell Chu. Chu Yang, you are really capable. Wu Qianqian covered her mouth and laughed in front of Chu Yang. Thinking about Chu Yang's nickname, Wu Qianqian was overjoyed. At the same time, deep in Wu Qianqian's heart, there was a faint sense of defeat and deep admiration. Chu Yang was younger than her by a year, but he had achieved something she could not even dream of. With one person's strength, and with an unknown background, he had become the minister of Butian Pavilion. This was the position that her father, Wu Yunliang, dreamed of, but after years of hard work, he still could not succeed. Yet Chu Yang had achieved all of this in just half a month. Of course, her father's background was different from Chu Yang's, so Tai Butian would not take the risk. But, wasn't Chu Yang also from Beyond the Heavens sect? Was he not afraid that Chu Yang was an invisible person from Beyond the Heavens sect? If he was wary of her father, why was he not wary of Chu Yang? These were all things that Wu Qianqian was puzzled about, but she would not say it out loud. Wu Qianqian had heard people talking about Chu Yang ever since she knew that Chu Yang had come. Then she had seen Chu Yang again, and had personally invited Chu Yang. Moreover, she had done it with the etiquette of a state guest. Wu Qianqian had felt like she was in a dream. She had truly admired this former junior martial brother of hers. Even though Wu Qianqian saw Chu Yang's every step clearly, she only analyzed it after the fact. If it was someone else, Wu Qianqian would not believe that anyone in this world could do better than Chu Yang. But the development after the fact was even more out of Wu Qianqian's expectations. He actually became the minister of Butian Pavilion in one night. Then, he smoothly integrated Butian Pavilion. Everyone, including the revered martial artists, was obedient to him. Others did not know Chu Yang's strength, but how could Wu Qianqian not know? Chu Yang was only a martial warrior. A martial warrior leading a group of martial masters, martial great masters, and revered martial artists. No one was dissatisfied with him, and he even became the object of worship. This kind of thing dazzled Wu Qianqian. Moreover, Chu Yang deliberately kept a low profile and did not reveal his martial strength. He actually left everyone with the impression that he was a weak scholar, who did not know martial arts. But what was even more outrageous was, which one of these martial artists wasn't arrogant and unruly? They actually allowed this weak scholar to stand above them. Moreover, their reverence for him didn't decrease, but instead increased. They were completely obedient to him. Until recently it was even more outrageous. This guy has become the king of Hell Chu. Even children don't dare to cry at night when his name is mentioned. Wu Qianqian felt dizzy. You should call me Minister Chu. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. He could only roll his eyes because even in the room, he was still wearing that ferocious mask. He wasn't trying to act cool by doing this. He had ulterior motives. His current strength was not enough. A sense of mystery was necessary. One had to know that sometimes the combination of mysteriousness and authority was a very powerful force. Everyone worshipped God, but who had ever seen God? If a god met people every day, then he wouldn't be a god. And Chu Yang was creating a god right now. He had made himself a god. Moreover, Chu Yang tried his best to spread the rumor that King of Hell Chu doesn't know martial arts. Although I don't know how effective it will be, it can still numb the enemy to a certain extent. Then if I encounter danger, the possibility of safely escaping will be very high. Minister Chu? I'll call you King of Hell Chu. Wu Qianqian sat opposite him, tilting her head and smiling. She seemed to be very interested in Chu Yang's ferocious mask. In fact, Wu Qianqian knew that every time she was in front of Chu Yang, if Chu Yang was in a good mood, then she would feel more relaxed. Even if he was wearing this strange mask, she would feel as if she was bathing in the spring breeze. But if Chu Yang was in a bad mood, then Wu Qianqian wouldn't be able to smile so unscrupulously. Even breathing would make her unconsciously nervous. Wu Qianqian didn't know why she had such a feeling. Up to you. What you want to call me is your business. Chu Yang lowered his head and continued to look at the file in front of him. In front of him was a peerless beauty. Her breath was like orchids, full of the scent of orchids and musk. But Chu Yang didn't seem to feel anything. He was carefully looking at the information in front of him. This gave Wu Qianqian a feeling. This man, no matter where he is, as long as he wants to calm down, he will be able to do it. Chu Yang's eyes quickly flashed through the information. Then his eyes focused on it and he became motionless. This usually meant that after Chu Yang finished looking at an official's information, he began to think about the loopholes. Every time this happened, he always had to think for a long time. Normal spies would do their best. There were so many people in Iron Cloud Nation, but no one discovered it. It was clear that it was hidden deeply. But Chu Yang wanted to find a loophole where no one could find one. The logic was simple to say, but to do it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Wu Qianqian calmly sat on the side and quietly watched Chu Yang ponder. She was a smart girl. She knew when she should tell a joke to let Chu Yang relax, and when she should not disturb him and need to be quiet. Although she was inexperienced in the ways of the world, her intuition as a woman allowed her to do this perfectly. This was also one of the reasons why Chu Yang allowed her to stay here. Even if there were no romantic thoughts, but the principle of men and women working together to make things less tiring was universal in all planes. A beautiful woman in front of him indeed had a certain motivational effect. No one wanted to lose face in front of a beautiful woman, and Chu Yang was no different. Tang Xiansheng, 37 years old, Assistant Minister of the Secretariat, Magistrate of Iron Cloud Citadel. He was an honest and upright official. He started at the age of 10 and steadily rose up the ranks. He was once, during his time in office, his reputation was very good. Wu Luoji, 38 years old, Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights. He was a bit greedy, but he was diligent. Chen Qishu, 37 years old, Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War. He had great perseverance and was once a general. He led his soldiers to plunder Great Zhao's Pingding Pass. Shoujijun. His reputation as an official was not bad. After reading the information of one official, Chu Yang pondered for a while. Then he picked up the information of another official. After a long time, he put away all the information he had read. He felt that there were no problems with these people. He wanted to put them aside, but he faintly felt that he had missed something. He carefully looked through them again, but still did not find anything. Chu Yang propped up his chin and thought deeply, but he was still at a loss. He could not help but sigh. Chu Yang, you just check one official after another. How many can you find? Could it be that in your eyes there is no good official in this world? Wu Qianqian was also looking at the information Chu Yang had checked. Seeing that Chu Yang seemed to have come to an end, she could not help but ask. When Chu Yang heard this, his eyebrows suddenly jumped. He stared at Wu Qianqian, his eyes full of vigor. That's right. Chu Yang finally remembered where the problem was. Wu Qianqian's words just now reminded him. Could it be that there is no good official in this world? Chu Yang murmured to himself. His face revealed a smile. Yes, Senior Marshal Sister Wu. You really reminded me and did me a big favor. Did you a big favor? Wu Qianqian asked blankly. She did not know how she helped him. What good official in this world? Chu Yang coldly snorted. His eyes locked onto Tang Xiansheng's information. The problem was that this Tang Xiansheng was too clean. Too clean, no. As an official, he was diligent and diligent. No matter if he was promoted or demoted, he always had no regrets. Moreover, he had a righteous aura. His sleeves were like the breeze of the wind. He was an official of Iron Cloud Prefecture, but he still farmed for a living. His clothes were simple and crude, and the money he saved was all used to help the poor. He was a fourth-grade official, but his wife was still weaving and his son was still farming. His son had the ability to pass the imperial examinations, but he used the reason, "Father is an official, if I am also an official, I will not be greedy, I will not blacken my own name. For the welfare of the people, one person in the family is enough." He put an end to his son's path to becoming an official. His meaning was, your father will be an official, and you will go and pass the imperial examinations. Even if you have real ability, others will not look at you and directly recruit you. That kind of official is better than not. As an official, your father is enough. It's better for you to avoid arousing suspicion. This person is simply a saint. Chapter 102. If there was a problem with this person, then the problem was that he was too honest, too clean, too pretentious. Chu Yang always liked to do things the opposite way. There was a saying that he always remembered. 1,000 miles to become an official is only for money. Every man for himself, and the heavens take the hindmost. In his previous life he roamed the world, wandering everywhere in lower three heavens. Everywhere he went, he scolded the officials for being greedy. Even those officials who had a good reputation lived in big mansions and ate delicacies. Even the worst of them were much better off than the average rich man. No one could live in poverty. Even the commoners were hoping that there would be more rice in the fields so that their families could eat better. To put it bluntly, the people Tang Xiansheng helped had better food and clothes than his own family. There is a problem with this person. Chu Yang pondered and pointed at Tang Xiansheng's information. Investigate. Even though Wu Qianqian had not been in Iron Cloud Citadel for long, she knew about the righteous blood for the country, clean sleeves for the people Tang Xiansheng. Official Tang. Tang Xiansheng had become the standard for all the officials in Iron Cloud Citadel. A model of morality. How could such a person be a traitor? Could it be that Chu Yang's brain was damaged by the fever? No need to doubt. Let Heavenly Secrets Hall investigate immediately. I want to see the information before this afternoon. If there is even the slightest bit of information on Tang Xiansheng before this afternoon, Heavenly Secrets Hall will be shut down. Tell Chen Yutong exactly what I said. Wu Qianqian wrinkled her nose, wrote a note and left. Suddenly there was chaos outside. People were shouting and horses were neighing. Everyone in Heavenly Secrets Hall rushed out as if they were trying to put out a fire. King of Helchu's punishment was not easy to endure. Chu Yang smiled and slowly said, you have to remember. In this world everyone has a weakness. A saint like this cannot exist. He pointed at Tang Xiansheng's name and coldly snorted. Chu Yang remembered a phrase in his heart very clearly. Are there saints in this world? Let's say there are, then do saints need to eat and wear clothes? Do they need to spend money? Do they need to find a wife? Do they need to have sex? If there is a need, then he is not a saint. Because he had a request. Therefore it can be inferred that there are no saints in this world. The person who said this was Mo Tianji. Chu Yang hated Mo Tianji to the bone. But he had to admit that Mo Tianji's words were reasonable. Since the establishment of the three halls, King of Helchu had always been very strict in his management. However, the Heavenly Secret Hall was still the most strict. The hall master of the Heavenly Secret Hall would be called in by Minister Chu almost every 2 or 3 days, and would be scolded to the face. Then the hall master would come out with a black face, and would grab his subordinates to beat them up even more severely. King of Helchu would naturally have evidence to scold someone. He would only scold someone if he had done something wrong. Chun Yutong didn't have the slightest bit of temper after being scolded. It was indeed wrong. Shouldn't he scold her? Minister Chu is very responsible. Therefore, Chun Yutong could only vent his anger on his subordinates. He didn't dare to vent his anger on Minister Chu. This also caused the Heavenly Secrets Hall to be extremely strict in their actions. Eventually, they basically stopped making mistakes. The hall master who was implicated because of one wrong word was scolded. Then the entire hall would suffer. Who would dare to make a mistake, let alone a mistake of principle? Of course, Chun Yutong and the others did not know that they were completely basking in Mo Tianji's glory. If they knew, they would probably swallow Mo Tianji alive. In the afternoon, Tang Xianshang's detailed information was placed on Chu Yang's desk. All the information added together was about half a foot thick. This kind of efficiency made Wu Qianqian click her tongue. So fast. Chu Yang opened it and looked carefully. Finally, a smile appeared on his face. This information was also clean and tidy. However, this clean information fell into Chu Yang's eyes. Because of his preconceived mentality, he found too many anomalies. This person started working as an official 10 years ago. At that time, he was 27 years old. He was poor. He was the descendant of a farmer. When he was 10 years old, his parents died. When he was 12 years old, his village was plundered by Great Zhao. No one in the village survived. He was the only one left hiding in a secret cellar. Chu Yang spoke slowly. Wu Qianqian held a writing brush and quickly wrote down what he said. Whether it was his family or the villagers, they all died too cleanly. This is the first point of suspicion. Moreover, if his house had a cellar, then according to the customs of the village, even if not every house had a cellar, most of them should have one. Why did they miss out on his family's cellar? Everyone else was dead, but he was a child hiding in a cellar and was fine. This is the second point of suspicion. Since Great Zhao's soldiers massacred the village, then they must have plundered it. After plundering, they would burn it down. This is the most reliable method. No matter which team, after plundering and massacring the village, this fire is unavoidable. If he was really in the cellar, even if they did not find him, even if the fire did not burn him, he would have suffocated to death. He would have suffocated to death. He could not have survived, but he did. This is the third point of suspicion. He escaped from the village and went to Jingguan City. Jingguan City is not far from the village, only 50 li. This distance is not close for a 12-year-old child. Forget it, this point of suspicion is a bit far-fetched. Let's not talk about it for now. In Jingguan City, he became the disciple of the famous Confucian scholar, Kong Guanren. What kind of person could a village child find to recommend him? Without anyone to recommend him, Kong Guanren accepted a beggar as his disciple? Is he such a saint? This is the fourth point of suspicion. Tang Xianshang became an elementary scholar at the age of 10, got married, passed the imperial examination at the age of 10, passed the imperial examination at the age of 20, and became an official at the age of 27. Even a top scholar would need time to learn the ways of an official. But he was only a substitute for half a year, and then he was sent out to work. This is the fifth point of suspicion. This experience is very clear, and there are witnesses. But if one is not famous, passing the imperial examination is a big matter. Everywhere, it is a matter of great interest. But this Tang Xianshang smoothly passed the imperial examination. Under normal circumstances, he is a child prodigy, a talent bestowed by the heavens. But he has always been very low-key. Before this, he was not famous. This is not in line with the psychology of the people. Psychology? Wu Qianqian's hand holding the pen paused, and she asked. This kind of person, no matter where he is, would be a famous person. He would also be a role model. A good example to encourage his younger brother to work hard. Obviously, this Tang Xianshang is not a good role model. He is very low-key. He is young, but he is not famous. This is the second point of suspicion. Chu Yang said, based on this, with his low-key personality, he would not publicize anything he does. But ever since he became an official, no matter what good he does, he would spread it out in a very short time. Moreover, it is not only in places where he is an official. If there are not enough people to add fuel to the fire, it is as if someone is sparing no effort to promote him. When he came to Iron Cloud capital, he wantonly publicized it. Almost everyone knows that this official Tang is an honest and upright official. He has only been an official for 10 years, and his position is not prominent, but he has such a reputation. This is really unusual. Moreover, it is not in line with his personality. This is the 7th point of suspicion. He is too strict with himself, but too lenient with outsiders. Moreover, he has been an official for 10 years, but he does not have a single enemy. Everyone is on good terms with him. This is the 8th point of suspicion. Chu Yang smiled gently. Everyone praises him for his good character. But being an official is like being in Jianghu, you have no choice. You have to pick a side. If you stand on one side, you will offend the other. This is a fixed number. The imperial court is like this. When the two sides are in a balance, they will move forward. His ability is outstanding, but he never strives for credit. However, his political achievements have never been lacking. Chu Yang smiled mischievously and said, "This world has never been so fair, but it has happened to him. He has no money, no power, and no background. Why does he deserve such fairness?" This is the first point of suspicion. 10 years ago, Di Wuqing was just beginning to gain power. He started to implement the Blacksmith Desert Plan in Iron Cloud. The timing is too coincidental. This is the 10th point of suspicion. Although his achievements are not small, and his political achievements are remarkable, from a lower official to a 4th-rank official in 10 years, this is more than one promotion per year. This kind of promotion speed is too fast. This is the 11th point of suspicion. Talented but not an official. In the name of avoiding suspicion, he does not have the experience of being an official in Iron Cloud. What is the suspicion of avoiding suspicion? Moreover, under my care, my son did not have much contact with the outside world. It is very difficult for him to have any loyalty to Iron Cloud. This behavior is the most difficult to explain, but it seems to have several meanings. My son has always been a farmer, but he never stopped studying. If he did not want to be an official, why did he study these things? Who is he preparing for? Chu Yang's smile slowly became cold. This is the 12th point of suspicion. With these 12 points of suspicion, even if he is a real saint, I will still kill him. King of Helchu's eyes revealed a ghostly sharp light. Chapter 103. Wu Qianqian was shocked. She did not think that Chu Yang would be able to find so many suspicious points just by looking at the information of such an upright and honest official. Although some of them were more or less unreasonable conjectures, with so many suspicious points gathered together, it was too deliberate. These were all coincidences. Wu Qianqian did not believe that there could be such a coincidence. If this person is really a spy, then it is very likely that he is the first big fish that Butian Pavilion has caught. Chu Yang said seriously. Wu Qianqian trembled. She understood what Chu Yang meant by big fish. If this was really the case, then from top to bottom it would implicate at least hundreds of people. Blood flowed like a river again. Chu Yang, even if he is a spy, you can't just kill him like that, Wu Qianqian said. This person's reputation is too good. He has a high reputation among the people of Iron Cloud. If you rashly take him down, I'm afraid it will cause unrest in the country. Wu Qianqian had been following Chu Yang and analyzing the people of Iron Cloud every day. Her thinking was much deeper than when she was at Beyond the Heavens sect. Oh, in your opinion? Chu Yang smiled. Wu Qianqian's learning ability was very good. In these days she was slowly becoming more and more capable. It would not be long before this talented and intelligent girl became his right-hand woman. Chu Yang did not know why Tai Butian sent Wu Qianqian over, but he did not refuse. One of the reasons was that Wu Qianqian was a member of Beyond the Heavens sect. If one day he was not there, Wu Qianqian could replace him and take charge of Butian Pavilion. This was the biggest gift that Chu Yang could give to his own sect, because his goal was not the lower 3 heavens. Therefore, from the beginning he had been intentionally or unintentionally guiding Wu Qianqian to become a qualified leader. Let's assume that he really is a spy. But these years, his diligence and responsibility are obvious to all. Plus, everything he did was beneficial to Iron Cloud. Killing him would not be justified, and it would cause criticism and unrest. Wu Qianqian pondered and said, even if there is evidence of him being a spy, whether the people will believe it or not is another matter. I think that we should discuss this matter with His Highness. Wu Qianqian said, we need to think of a way to solve this problem. But we also need to think about what to do afterwards. How to calm everything that might happen. That's right. We can't act recklessly in this matter. Tai Butian must know about it. Chu Yang praised. As he spoke, he pondered for a moment before he said, I'll leave the matter of informing Tai Butian to you. See what he says and then add to it. Give me a plan of action. I'm going out now. Then he took off his black cloak and his mask, and placed them on the table. Are you going out again? Wu Qianqian was speechless. These days, Chu Yang had only stayed here for a short period of time, and then disappeared without a trace. Even she didn't know where Chu Yang had gone. Chu Yang's whereabouts were mysterious to a certain extent. Wu Qianqian could hardly believe it. Butian Pavilion had such a large workload. How did he manage to complete it? Just looking and thinking would require a huge amount of time, right? However, Chu Yang didn't seem to have any difficulty in doing all of this. Yeah, it's too stuffy here. I'm going out for a stroll. Chu Yang said casually. He stretched out his hand, and a door appeared on the wall behind him. Chu Yang's body flashed, and he disappeared into the door. The door slowly returned to normal without a trace. From an outsider's point of view, it was still a complete wall. Wu Qianqian sighed helplessly. She put on Chu Yang's cloak, put on his mask, and sat in Chu Yang's seat. These days, when Chu Yang was not here, Wu Qianqian was here to pretend. Perhaps Chu Yang was being so mysterious just to be lazy? Wu Qianqian thought and shook her head with a bitter smile. She quickly wrote down a piece of paper, and imitated Chu Yang's voice. She lightly shouted, someone come. Send this to His Highness immediately. I have something to discuss with His Highness. Chu Yang was being so mysterious. Naturally, it wasn't to be lazy. Of course, being lazy at Butian Pavilion was one thing. The second thing was to maintain the mystery. Then, he had to secretly develop Heavenly Armament Pavilion. That place was under construction. He couldn't neglect it. Of course, the most important thing was that Chu Yang had to increase his own strength. That day, ever since he understood the gentle force of water, Chu Yang felt that his martial arts were slowly changing. Many areas that he had never considered before, and had never thought of before, were gradually opening up in front of him. The temptation of learning martial arts was Chu Yang's biggest motivation. These days, Ironcloud Citadel didn't just have a simple king of Hell Chu. There was also a Dark Knight challenger. In Ironcloud Citadel, almost all of the famous martial artists were constantly harassed by one person. Ironcloud Citadel's martial arts schools were not few. Being in the north, the people were tough and there were naturally many martial artists. Although there were only a few peak martial artists, in terms of the number of people, Ironcloud Citadel had a lot of martial artists. This Dark Knight challenger's actions were very strange. It seemed like he changed his appearance every day. But he was not serious about his disguise. One day he was 20, the next he would be 30, the day after that he would be a pretty boy, then a red face and then a mole on his face. In short, every day was different. But it seemed like he was practicing his disguise technique. It seemed like this Dark Knight challenger was trying his best to look the same, but he couldn't do it. This was the truth. Chu Yang really wanted to dress the same every day, but time was tight, and he wasn't serious. Every time he changed his appearance, it was done hastily, and then he couldn't wait to go out. Anyway, no one recognized him. In the end, he didn't care. After today's challenge, he would forget how he dressed the next day. But no matter how he dressed, everyone knew. Yes, this is the guy. He is the Dark Knight challenger. Even if he turned into ashes, I would still recognize him. This Dark Knight challenger's martial arts were not high. It seemed like he was only at the level of a martial warrior, but he seemed to be improving every day. Plus, his actions were very disciplined. In the past 20 days, he had already challenged more than 30 martial artists. If there was someone who was paying attention to his schedule, they would find that this Dark Knight challenger did not randomly challenge people. The first person he challenged was definitely the weakest among the famous martial artists in Ironcloud Citadel. Then, one by one, they slowly became stronger and challenged him one by one. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Each level was higher than the next. If the martial artists of Ironcloud Citadel were ranked according to the order he challenged them, then there would be no mistake. At most he injured people and the injuries were not serious. He never killed people. But if you didn't fight with him, he wouldn't curse people and he wouldn't do anything vulgar. He would only act shamelessly. But his shameless methods were unbearable. If you refused, fine. He would just sit at your door and not let anyone out. Go out to buy groceries? No. Go out to visit friends? No. Go out to play? Even worse. No matter who it was, no one was allowed to go out. You came out to stop him? Just right, let's fight first. If you let other people out, he wouldn't fight. He would just quarrel with you. In just a short while, it would be as noisy as a market. Hundreds of people gathered at the door to watch the fun. How could they pass the day? Therefore, other than the first 10 days, whoever this Dark Knight challenger went to their door, they would jump out and play with him. In any case, they could fight however they wanted. On the contrary, he knew when to stop. If you were not his opponent, he would run away after one fight. If you were not his opponent, he would not come again.